Chapter 1560. Li Shimin was seething with excitement. Although he had never seen the awe of hundreds of cannons being fired at the same time, he knew the spectacular scene of tens of thousands of arrows being fired at the same time. Li Shimin couldn't help but get excited. "Feng Zi, you said it? Why don't you build it?" At this time, can we stop talking? Li Shimin was really anxious. Yu Shernan and the others were dumbfounded. Although such a spectacular scene was a little hot-blooded, it was built on the premise of each and every life. No matter when once a battle big or small started, it was bound to make people restless. This was the most important and the most painful thing. If this was the case, then, Feng Zi, how long will it take to build 10 cannons? Li Shimin asked directly. "As long as you say the time, I will arrange the rest. How many people do you want, how much money do you want, and the things you want, I will give you whatever you want." Zhang Feng looked at Li Shimin with a strange expression and said, "I say, Lao Li, why are you worried about this? You speak as if you are the emperor." Li Shimin was shocked. He knew that he was a little too anxious. He smiled and said, "Isn't this what Lord Zhang's son has been sending people to say? This matter is indeed urgent. After all, we don't know when the war will start. Once it starts, victory or defeat will be decided in the blink of an eye." At this time, a large number of modified bows and arrows have been sent to the front line, but these bows and arrows have not been tested yet. Tested? Zhang Feng immediately perked up when he heard that. He shouted outside the door, "Gao Can." In an instant, Zhang Feng's door trembled and was forcefully opened. Everyone was stunned to see that the bolt on the door had been broken. Zhang Feng's eyes were wide open. Looking at Gao Can, who entered the door, he was so angry that his fingers trembled. "Tonight, if you don't have *King fix my door before tonight, Lao Tzu, I will send you to the front line tomorrow." Gao Can heard and immediately became energetic. "Thank you, teacher." Zhang Feng was baffled when he heard that. However, this scene made Li Shimin's eyes light up. This guy was truly a fine piece of jade that was prepared for war. After all, he was Li Shimin, who had seen countless talents and had once led troops into battle. When he saw Gao Can at this time, he instantly could not sit still. He had long noticed this brat. He was determined to follow Zhang Feng. Whatever Zhang Feng said, he would do. Moreover, he had extraordinary strength and was abnormally vicious. The last time he tried to enter Zhang Feng's room, the two chamberlains of imperial insignia were unable to break through his defenses. Was it a human? At this moment, Zhang Feng was too lazy to argue. He waved his hand and said, "Go to the workshop and get a crossbow. Bring all the crossbows here." As he spoke, Gao Can left. After Gao Can left, Li Shimin said with a smile, "Feng Zi." Zhang Feng looked at Li Shimin's smiling face and his heart instantly tensed up. He said with a face full of vigilance, "What?" Li Shimin was stunned. Seeing Zhang Feng like this, how could he say anything? He could only sigh and look at Gao Can's back. "Are you willing to let such a talent stay in the academy and waste his time?" Zhang Feng instantly understood. Gao Can is honest and loyal. Although he is brave on the battlefield, this is also a drawback. Therefore, I want to let him train for a while and then throw him into the army. You see, a situation like the one last night is actually very common at the front line. How to defend the city is not a problem. The key is how to deal with unexpected events in the city, such as spies spreading rumors and poisoning the wells. We have to consider all these. What do you think Gao Can will do if he goes now? He is just an idiot. That is why I said that Gao Can is not suitable for the battlefield. Once he goes on the battlefield, he will just be giving himself up. You all should think about Huotsubing and you will know. Instantly, Li Shimin fell silent. Yu Shernan and the others nodded their heads. They were afraid that Zhang Feng would send all these good seedlings out. Gao Can was honest and loyal, and they were used to ordering him around. If such a person went to the battlefield, how long could he survive? In their eyes, such a cunning place was not suitable for the battlefield. At that very moment, Gao Can ran over with a broken sack on his back. Everyone could clearly feel that the lid of the teacup on the table was shaking. The moment Gao Can entered, he carefully placed the sack on the ground and pulled it open. Voila! In an instant, a few of the items inside leaked out. The first thing that caught their eyes was a strong crossbow. The handle of the crossbow was made from red sandalwood. There was an eagle's head engraved on it, and the bowstring looked like a pair of wings. This strange crossbow did not look like it did in the past. This crossbow had 3 arrowheads, and the height of the crossbow was the height of a chopstick. There were 3 arrowheads as well as the bowstring. This meant that 1 round of firing would require 9 arrowheads. When everyone saw this, they felt a chill run down their spines. More importantly, the bowstring of this crossbow was made from pure steel and rubber. Thus, looking at it now, the entire crossbow gave off a heavy and murderous feeling. Zhang Feng picked up the crossbow and almost fell flat on his face because of the weight. After regaining his composure, Zhang Feng used both hands to put the crossbow on his shoulder. He looked at Li Shimin majestically and said, "Let's go and give it a try." Chapter 1561. Li Shimin couldn't wait any longer. He hurriedly picked up a bucket of arrows and an equally heavy bow from the sack and followed Zhang Feng out of the room. The bow and arrow looked like an ordinary bow and arrow. It only had an extra handle, an arrow rack, and a ring. The weight of the bow was 3 times that of the previous crossbow. Not to mention the length, it was as tall as a person. This made Li Shimin even more curious. Once they were out of the villa, Zhang Feng squinted and looked around. He instantly found the target and pointed to the jujube tree by the lake under the waterfall in the distance. "Lao Li, let's try shooting that tree?" Li Shimin looked at the tree in a daze. The tree was at least 500 meters away from here. At this distance, could he hit it? Zhang Feng smiled mysteriously and said, "You don't believe me?" Li Shimin was speechless. "It's so far. Don't talk about accuracy. If you can hit it, I'll find you a princess as your wife." "Princess?" Zhang Feng heard and couldn't help but laugh. "Well, if you really have that kind of ability, let's bet?" While talking, Zhang Feng waved at Gao Can and said, "You do it." Li Shimin was a little curious. Zhang Feng pointed to the bow in Li Shimin's hand and said, "If you can hit that tree within 3 arrows, I'll give you a whole roasted lamb. How about that?" Gao Can heard and his eyes lit up. "I don't want a whole roasted lamb." Zhang Feng was happy. "Then what do you want?" "I want you to promise me a request." "A request?" Zhang Feng was a little curious. But he still nodded and said, "Okay, not to mention 1, even 10 will do. By the way, have you taken a fancy to a girl?" Gao Can wouldn't say anything. He directly picked up the bow and arrow. Then he aimed at the tree in the distance. After taking aim a few times, he slowly knocked the arrow and slowly pulled it back. Zhang Feng pointed at the circle and said, "This is the crosshair. When you have nothing to do, use this to aim. You can't go wrong." Gao Can didn't say anything, but Li Shimin became even more passionate. Li Shimin waved his hand and the commander of the Jinwu guards immediately rushed forward. Li Shimin pointed at the jujube tree and said, "Go and take a look. If you hit it, let me know." After everything was ready, Zhang Feng confirmed, "Are you ready?" "Shoot!" Swish. Without waiting for Zhang Feng to finish speaking, the bow in Gao Can's hand was pulled back into a full circle. Just as Li Shimin was about to dodge, Gao Can brazenly released the bowstring. The arrowhead directly tore through the air, erupting with a burst of ear-piercing sounds as it disappeared in front of everyone's eyes. Or rather, before anyone could see the shadow of the arrow, it had already disappeared. When everyone came to their senses, looking at the motionless jujube tree, they couldn't help but be stunned. This thing, could it really shoot so far? Everyone couldn't help but look in the direction of the jujube tree. Seeing that Li Shimin's servant by the jujube tree had disappeared after searching for a long time, Li Shimin and Yu Shernan began to doubt whether Zhang Feng's bow could shoot so far. After all, this bow, in their knowledge, didn't have any arrowhead that could shoot so far. For example, the ballista couldn't reach such a range. At this time, Zhang Feng didn't care. He waved his hand and said, "Continue, continue. Don't stop." Li Shimin suppressed his curiosity and watched again. And Gao Can's expression changed a little. He had heard from his teacher that this thing could hit something 500 steps away. But this, seemed to be a bit exaggerated? Gao Can did not believe in heresy. He directly drew the bow and took a stance. Then, according to Zhang Feng's method, he directly aimed according to the crosshair. After aiming for a long time, he slowly pulled the bow. When the bowstring burst out an unbearable sound, Gao Can's heart sank. Only then did Gao Can loosen his grip. Whoosh! A more ear-piercing sound. Yu Shernan and others couldn't help but cover their ears subconsciously. But this time, the jujube tree still didn't move a little. This time, Zhang Feng couldn't sit still. He threw the crossbow in his hand to Gao Can and hurried to the jujube tree. He wanted to see for himself what it meant. Gao Can studied in the army. Before coming to the academy, he had learned archery from a master. It could be said that his archery skills had never missed. But this time, why didn't it work? Is there a problem with my method? Or is there a problem with the material? Can't the bow and arrow reach such a long range? He had already said this. If he lost face at this time, he would lose a lot of face. After this batch of bows and arrows came out, they hadn't been tested effectively. They were just tested according to the range of conventional bows and arrows. Then they were hurriedly sent to the border. One was the problem of time. The other was that they were all busy. Li Shimin didn't have time to come. Who would Zhang Feng ask to test it? At this time, seeing Zhang Feng go over, several people couldn't help but be curious and hurriedly followed Zhang Feng. When they came to the jujube tree, Zhang Feng and others were dumbfounded. Who the hell said that the bow and arrow didn't hit? The bow and arrow directly shot through the jujube tree. Damn it. What kind of power was this? The commander of the Jinwu guards had also heard of the power of the bow, so when Gao Can was designing, he had already hidden aside. After the arrow was shot, he hurriedly looked at it from afar. There was no arrow cluster on the tree, nor on the ground. More importantly, this mother-f*** king thing had pierced through a tree. Where were they going to find it? This time, the few of them couldn't help but stare at the holes in the tree, letting out sounds of toothache as they sucked in cold air. Zhang Feng patted Li Shimin's shoulder proudly and said, "Lao Li, this time what do you say?" Chapter 1562. What could Li Shimin say? He had never paid attention to this batch of bows and arrows. He only thought that Zhang Feng was bragging, and his focus was on the cannon, as well as the gun and the ballista that Zhang Feng mentioned. But now, when he saw the hole in the tree, it seemed to have opened the door to a new world for Li Shimin. This thing was simply prepared for the battlefield. If every army had 10,000 of these bows and arrows, they would be able to do so. When the two armies were facing each other, with only one round of fire, the other side would be defeated. At this time, when he saw the bow in Gao Can's hand, Li Shimin couldn't help but feel excited. But at this time, Zhang Feng also seemed to be very satisfied and clapped his hands. Go, try the power of this strong crossbow. Zhang Feng looked around and then pointed to the smooth wall on the side of the villa in the distance. Let's go there and try. While talking, they returned to the villa area again. Then, after confirming that there was no one around, Zhang Feng and the others then got into position and tried to shoot the strong crossbow. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Everyone could see bursts of explosions on the wall in the distance with the naked eye, and then a black dot appeared in the rustling wall powder. Everyone looked at the arrow cluster on the wall again and felt a headache. This thing. If it was on the battlefield. Then, Li Shimin couldn't help but look at the strong crossbow in Gao Can's hand and said, "Let me try." But Gao Can didn't even bother to look at him. It made Li Shimin's head spin. Zhang Feng patted Gao Can's shoulder proudly and said, not bad, but you have to fix the wall, or it will look weird." Lao Li, are you satisfied with this thing now? Satisfied. Very satisfied. Li Shimin nodded repeatedly. But he still asked, "But you said that you added steel to the arrowhead, can this thing really pierce through ordinary protective gear?" Zhang Feng heard and waved his hand. "Go get a big iron plate, let's put Lao Li to try, how about it?" Gao Can turned and left. Li Shimin rubbed his hands excitedly, playing with the long bow and the strong crossbow. He loved it so much that he couldn't put it down. Seeing this, the old scholar couldn't help but pull Zhang Feng out of the crowd and asked, "Fengzi, this thing is a little. Once this thing is used on the battlefield, if it was taken by someone with evil intentions, Wouldn't it be a World War II? Hearing this, Zhang Feng's expression was also serious. The old scholar's worry was actually not a problem. At that time, he also had had such worries. If such a thing were to really leak out, wouldn't the world be in chaos? It was easy for all the kings to rise together. But at this time, the Tang dynasty needed something like this, so that the entire Tang dynasty would not be controlled by others. This thing was like a deterrent. Zhang Feng knew that it was not good to have too much of this thing, but after thinking about the records of the Tang dynasty, with Hou Junji's death, Li Qingqian would not have much of a problem. At the very least, with his timid personality, he would not dare to raise an army. So, Zhang Feng felt that it should not be a problem for the Tang dynasty to get this thing out. Besides, Zhang Feng also had a backup plan for this thing. When the Battle of Xianxia was over, this thing would be handed over to the old emperor. At that time, he would not have to do anything, and he would even get a generous commission. This feeling was simply too good. Moreover, only Zhang Feng could make guns, real rifles, sniper rifles, and other such things. Compared to those things, this crossbow was simply too weak. And the old scholar's words had also enlightened Zhang Feng. It seemed that this composite bow could not be made, at least not now. Even if he wanted to make it, it would be in the future. After all, the crafting of this thing was truly too complicated, and the time needed to make it was also a problem. He could not make it even if he wanted to. The old scholar saw Zhang Feng's silence and thought that he was thinking about something, so he anxiously asked, "Fengzi, I know that your original intention in making this thing was to solve the border problem and the problem of the Turks. But if such a lethal weapon were to be leaked, or if the Turks were to steal the technology, then..." Zhang Feng took a deep breath and said, "Don't worry. This thing is all with me and I made each step separately. For example, the people in the East Market are only responsible for making the body of the crossbow, while the people in the West Market make the bow. And the people in the mountain make the bowstring, and the assembly is done by the same group. These people usually keep it a secret. At most, they only know that they are here to forge iron. But once they leave here, they won't know that the person in front of them is actually a member of the team." The old scholar sighed and said, "But this thing will cost a lot of money. Make as little as possible. Don't add so much karma." Hearing this, Zhang Feng nodded like a chicken pecking at rice. I know. Seeing Zhang Feng's reaction, the old scholar shook his head and sighed. "Well, I don't want to watch. I have classes over there." The old scholar really couldn't stand it anymore. He shook his head, clasped his hands behind his back, and slowly walked away. After the old scholar left, Zhang Feng looked at Li Shimin, who was playing happily, and said, "Lao Li, do you have anything to say now?" Without waiting for Li Shimin to speak, Gao Can's voice slowly rang out. "I have something to say." Chapter 1563. Zhang Feng and Li Shimin were both stunned. They looked at Gao Can and asked, "What do you want?" Gao Can looked at the two of them and waved the longbow in his hand with a burning gaze. "Didn't Master promise me 3 conditions?" Zhang Feng was a little dumbfounded. Looking at the honest Gao Can, he rubbed his eyes. Is this guy still the same Gao Can? At this time, even Yu Shernan and Li Shimin were interested. Li Shimin smiled and waved his hand. "Tell me if it's not excessive, I'll agree to it, let alone him." "Really?" Gao Can couldn't help but ask. Yu Shernan was so scared that he coughed. "Gao Can, pay attention to your words. What did this old man teach you?" Li Shimin waved his hand indifferently. Today, on one hand, he went up the mountain to deal with the matters at the foot of the mountain. Now that the matters at the foot of the mountain were settled, it was time to relax. On the other hand, after seeing this batch of bows, Li Shimin was really happy. Moreover, Gao Can was a rare general seedling that Li Shimin liked among this group of students. Naturally, he cherished talent. As long as his request wasn't excessive, why not give it to him? Seeing that Li Shimin took the initiative to accept, Zhang Feng rolled his eyes and said, "Then tell me, which family's girl do you like?" "Don't worry, Lao Li is rich and imposing. No matter which family's girl she is, Lao Li can get her for you." Gao Can shook his head and said, "Teacher, I want to go to Xianxia." What? Zhang Feng was instantly stunned. Because he was stunned, he hurriedly asked, "You want to go to Xianxia?" Gao Can nodded heavily. Why? Because I want to go to the real battlefield to experience it. No. Zhang Feng heard this and immediately waved his hand to refuse. What a joke. From Zhang Feng's point of view, Gao Can was just a hothead who hadn't been enlightened. Such a young man was simple-minded and easily deceived. This was the future god of war. Zhang Feng did not dare to let such a talent die. What if he died early? Would there be one less capable student in the military in the future? How was he going to brag to others in the future? Why are you teaching other students? There's no room for discussion. Change to something else. But Gao Can was stubborn and refused to relent. Li Shimin's eyes flashed. He patted Zhang Feng's shoulder and said, I say, since you've already said it, it's not good to go back on your words, right? Or perhaps, you don't have confidence in this batch of weapons? Or do you have doubts about Qian Er's intelligence and General Niu's strength? This time, Zhang Feng was instantly speechless. He waved his hand in annoyance and said, Fine. I don't care. Since you're the one who vouched for him, if anything happens to him, I'll ask for you. Seeing this, Gao Can's face flushed with excitement and he stuttered for a long time. Zhang Feng was also annoyed. He waved his hand and said, You can go, but you have to complete the homework I taught you on time every day. Get lost. When you're leaving, come find me with Li Qian. I'll give you a life-saving toy. Gao Can heard this and left excitedly. Li Shimin's eyes lit up again. Fengzi, the life-saving toy you mentioned, don't. If you don't give it to me now, I don't have much time to make it. It's too complicated. Let's talk about it when I succeed. I'm sleepy. Why don't you? Seeing Zhang Feng driving him away, Li Shimin's mouth twitched. But he still saluted and left. After all, the mess at the foot of the mountain was waiting for him to clean up. If he didn't leave now, when would he leave? Furthermore, the issue of the cannon was constantly on his mind. Now everything was ready. And Zhang Feng's words and the things that Zhang Feng made today made Li Shimin have a better understanding of the safety of Cheng. That was, as long as the city defense army had a batch of such bows and arrows, as well as those spears and modeo. No one could shake the security of Cheng. Not a bit. No one could easily cause trouble in Cheng and city like before. After Li Shimin left, Zhang Feng yawned and sent Yu Shernan and the others away. He knew that Yu Shernan and the others must have countless things to say to him. But Zhang Feng just didn't want to talk. This matter was extremely difficult to talk about. It was also difficult to talk about. Zhang Feng was too lazy to talk. At this time, it was already noon. When Zhang Feng entered the living room, he smelled the aroma of meat and mushrooms. He walked into the kitchen with a strange feeling. It didn't matter at first glance. Zhang Feng was so scared that he almost shouted for help. In the kitchen, Old He's wife was teaching Yu Yao how to cook, and several old women were teaching Jingshu how to cut vegetables. On the side, the fire of the stove had already ignited the firewood outside the stove. The two girls were so scared that they chattered in a mess. Old He's wife and the others also comforted the two women with a bucket of water. Although the fire was extinguished, anyone who had burned firewood before would be able to imagine the ashes in the stove. Zhang Feng decisively left the kitchen. He opened the window and let the smoke out of the kitchen dissipate a little. Then he took a deep breath and said, Life is so good. Chapter 1564. At this moment, the battle in Chang had ended. The main culprit had been captured. It was the tyrant of Dragon King Town, Duke Chen's nephew. When the Imperial Guards went there, they fought with the Imperial Guards and died under their swords. When the court learned of this, they were shocked. But at this moment, an even more shocking piece of news came out of the court. Hou Junji was dead, and he had died on the way to Chang, falling into the Chan River. Although many people doubted the accuracy of this news, the truth was right before their eyes. It had happened at the foot of Mount Zhongnan. Tens of thousands of soldiers and the entire Chang and navy had only found Hou Junji's corpse 3 li below the Chan River bridge. This time, everyone who had come to watch was stunned. He was really dead. And according to the investigation, Hou Junji did not seem to have suffered any external injuries before he died, but everyone was still hesitant. Why would Ho Junji fall into the river here? And where did his guards go? But the emperor had only issued a decree, so no one could pursue the matter. 3 days later, Chang and city had returned to its former prosperity, and everyone seemed to have forgotten about that incident. Everyone's eyes were once more fixed on Mount Zhongnan. Because the autumn planting had already been going on for half a month, but there was still no sign of the phosphate fertilizer. However, outside the Tonghua Gate, there was an additional team of people digging and clearing a path. This made everyone even more surprised. After asking around, they learned that they were actually building a phosphate fertilizer factory. Instantly, countless people joined the battlefield in excitement. All they needed was 2 full meals. They could work for you for an entire day. But because all the people wanted to get this thing out as soon as possible so that they would not have to go hungry in the coming year. When the Ministry of Works learned of this matter, Li Xiaogong immediately asked for Li Shimin's permission to allocate countless provisions and silver. Then, the battlefield at the foot of Mount Longsho, which had less than 1,000 soldiers and craftsmen at the start, instantly swelled to more than 5,000. Moreover, countless people would come every day and volunteer to join in. For the first time, White Deer College disappeared from everyone's sight. It was rare for Zhang Feng to live a comfortable life. Every day, he would take a walk with the 2 girls, hunt, fish, and sometimes have a barbecue in the wild, which amused the 2 girls. On the other side, Cheng Chumo and the others were having a hard time. The windmill had already been built once. If it didn't work, they would have to tear it down and build it again. In the end, he had no choice but to seek help from the carpenters on the mountain. Only then was he freed. Ma Zhou, Hao Chujun, and the others were the most relaxed. Every day, other than studying knowledge, they would be running back and forth in the smithy. No one knew what they were tinkering with, but there were many huge bottles and jars in the place where they lived. This scene, it made Cheng Chumo and the others want to cry. But there was no other way. The matter had already reached this point. Cheng Chumo and the others were also motivated. Other than the water wheel, almost all the water troughs in the villa area had been set up. As soon as the water wheel was ready, they could test the water. Once the water test was completed, this thing would become the only and first water circulation drive system in the entire Tang dynasty. How could Cheng Chumo and the others not be excited? Although they also wanted to go to the battlefield with Li Chengqian, and that was the place they wanted to go the most, the importance of this water wheel was beyond doubt. This was an important matter that would determine whether the people of the entire Tang dynasty could use phosphate fertilizer before the new year. Once it was completed, then going to the battlefield would be dregs. This was a magnificent feat. It was extremely terrifying. Boom, boom. 2 muffled sounds were heard. In the villa area, there was a burst of cheers. Then, Cheng Chumo ran to the lake, panting. Pointing at the water wheel in the villa area, he excitedly pulled Zhang Feng and said, "Fengzi, look, the water wheel is ready." Zhang Feng was speechless. It was good that it was ready, right? Because of his actions, the fish that was about to fall into his hands was gone. Zhang Feng was so angry that he threw the fishing rod away. But then he looked at it. He couldn't help but ask in surprise, "Did you invite the carpenter on the mountain?" The carpenter on the mountain was invited by Zhang Shan from Tongzhou. He used to work in the Ministry of Works. His craftsmanship, the desks, teaching aids, and so on the mountain were all made by him. Cheng Chumo wiped his sweat and grinned. "You didn't say that I couldn't invite him." Zhang Feng was speechless and gave him a thumbs up. "Well, then there's no need to look at it. Hurry up and set up the water wheel. But remember, once the water wheel is set up, make sure that it can be used for a long time in the water." Cheng Chumo patted his chest and said, "Don't worry about this. I've asked around. These people have built the imperial garden in the palace and the water wheel in the Daming Palace. There's nothing wrong with their craftsmanship." Zhang Feng chuckled. "Well, let's see." Chapter 1565. Zhang Feng meant. He wanted to make a pure steel axle. Zhang Feng knew the power of the water wheel. But this axle had to be replaced almost once a year. Below the waterfall, the impact of the water falling down from the mountain was far greater than the resistance of the water in the gentle river. But at this time, seeing Cheng Chumo so confident, Zhang Feng didn't want to dampen his spirits, so he had to remind him, Yu Yao and Jingshu carried a basket of fish and followed Zhang Feng to the balcony on the second floor of the villa. They sat by the small stove, watching Zhang Feng roasting fish while watching hundreds of men lifting the water wheel. Although the two women blushed and blushed, such a spectacular and manly scene was rare. The water wheel was made of ordinary materials. Because of the rush, the carvings and decorations on it were almost omitted. But even so, it took more than 2 hours for them to get the water wheel into the water. Then it was the big base. The base was easy to get. It was nothing more than getting some stone strips that had been chiseled and flattened by stonemasons. Then they dismantled the water wheel and put it on bit by bit. Zhang Feng also admired these people's perseverance. Without any external help, they could actually set up this 5-meter-high water wheel. And they didn't know what method they used to firmly integrate it with the stone platform that had been laid out in the water before. At this time, in everyone's expectation, the water wheel began to turn. With the force of the water, it slowly became faster and faster, and everyone looked at the water wheel carefully. When the water wheel had started to spin perfectly, everyone began to shout like children in the water. They shouted from afar, "Feng, how is it? What do you think of this thing?" Zhang Feng was a little speechless, but he still nodded. He got up and looked at everyone, raised the wine glass in his hand, and shouted at the same time, "Good job! Wow!" In an instant, Cheng Chumo and the others cheered again. And most importantly, it was the circulation system of the entire water wheel. The entire water wheel and water tank. A total of 7 water wheels of different sizes were used. There were also countless water troughs that circled around every house in the villa area and the dormitory area. In the end, it returned to the lake because of the power of the water wheel. Only by completing all of this, only then would it be considered the true end. Zhang Feng could not wait any longer. Once the water wheel starts moving, the water wheel will start moving. The matter was almost set in stone. As for how long he could maintain it, that would depend on the abilities of these fellows. If Li Qian, Du Go, Ma Zhou and the others were to do this, Zhang Feng knew that with their intelligence, they would definitely do a better job. However, Zhang Feng didn't want them to come. Instead, he chose Cheng Chumo and the other uncouth men and Xianxia. Xianxia's shrewd calculation ability had already stunned everyone. Li Gang and the old elementary scholar even announced that they had accepted him as their last disciple. This time, it was like a bolt out of the blue for everyone. 2 great scholars had accepted a disciple as their last disciple. This was simply a rare knowledge of numbers. These were not important. The important thing was that without Xianxia's idea and calculation ability, Zhang Feng estimated that this group of iron fools would not be able to come up with this thing even if they were given a year. The appearance of Xianxian also stimulated these fellows. Usually, when they were studying physics and dynamics, these fellows were either doing this or that. However, during this period, Zhang Feng found that this group of fellows, instead of jumping around, directly went to do things in silence. He even heard that they often woke up Du Dabing and the others in the middle of the night to ask questions from books. Therefore, after hearing this matter, Zhang Feng was really completely relieved. Dynamics was not something that could be achieved with a simple water wheel. Zhang Feng smiled. Then he shouted at Shiva, who was standing at the side, "Shiva, go, scrape some white stuff on the wall of the latrine for me. Also, go to the kiln where the lime is burned and get some charcoal." Zhang Feng listed out in detail the things needed to make gunpowder. Shiva was a little confused, but he still obeyed the order and went. After Shiva left, Jingshu frowned and asked, "What do you want the things in the latrine for?" "And that's saltpeter. I remember that only the Ministry of Works seems to have it. It seems that it is very rare among the people. What do you want it for?" Zhang Feng smiled and said, "Didn't you hear the conversation between Lao Li and I in the living room downstairs just now?" The 2 girls shook their heads in confusion. Zhang Feng heard this and instantly stopped talking. After pondering for a while, he looked at the setting sun hanging in the col of the Qinling Mountains not far away and said, "That is something that can make mankind take a big step forward." Jingshu was stunned. She looked at Zhang Feng in confusion. Seeing that she was not joking at this time, he sighed slightly and said, "I don't understand." Gunpowder is the ammunition used by cannons. I don't understand. Can you say something that I can understand? The weather is so good today. Chapter 1566. Dong. The sound of the court. In this foggy early morning, the sound quietly cut through the sky of Cheng. Although it was only 5 o'clock in the morning, the basketball courts on the streets were already overcrowded. Everyone was playing basketball with all their might. From time to time, there were even bursts of cheers and curses. In the courtyards of some rich families, all the servants were doing morning exercises under the supervision of the housekeeper and the master's wife. On the streets, the soldiers of the Chang and local government and the students of the Imperial College of Hongwenguan were all shouting and doing morning exercises over and over again. Everything was so peaceful and peaceful. But in the Imperial Palace, swords were drawn and bows were drawn. At this time, all the officials were neatly looking at Li Shimin, who was slowly ascending the 8-step stairway to heaven in the court. Today, Li Shimin was in a particularly good mood. After dealing with the daily affairs, Li Shimin directly wanted to invite the officials to take a look at the imperial plantation outside the city. The Minister of Agriculture hurriedly stepped forward and said, "Your Majesty, I have something to report." Li Shimin was stunned and waved his hand, saying, "Go ahead." "Your Majesty, it has been half a month since the autumn planting. We have heard that the Grand Scholar Zhang Feng of White Deer College has made phosphate fertilizer, but we have not seen any trace of phosphate fertilizer. Now all the people in Chang are talking about it. Your Majesty, please issue an edict to let Zhang Feng produce phosphate fertilizer as soon as possible so that it can be used for food recovery after the disaster." "Your Majesty, we second the motion." "I second the motion." Hearing this, Li Shimin's expression became serious. He waved his hand and looked at Li Xiaogong, saying, "Xiaogong, what's the matter now?" Hearing this, Li Xiaogong, the Minister of Works, hurriedly bowed and said, "Your Majesty, there are thousands of people in the Ministry of Works, plus the craftsmen I found, and more than 3,000 people volunteered to join the construction of the phosphate fertilizer factory on Mount Longsho. I'm afraid it will be finished in 5 days. 5 days? Li Shimin nodded slightly and said, "If it's 5 days, there should still be enough time. I learned that this thing can be used after planting wheat seeds. Therefore, everything in the Ministry of Agriculture can continue as usual. There's no need to worry too much. Also, tell the people not to panic over this matter." When the Minister of Agriculture heard this, he hurriedly said, "Your Majesty, this subject has also gone to that mine to take a look these past 2 days. Although the minister's words are indeed true, according to this subject's knowledge, producing phosphate fertilizer requires water. Although that mine has water, I fear it doesn't meet Principal Zhang's requirements. And as we all know, even if we can build the kind of instrument that President Zhang mentioned, it will take some time. In that case, won't we have to wait for another month?" 1 month later, then, although the words of the Minister of Agriculture ended here. But everyone knew. It was difficult to build something, not to mention building a factory. And Li Shimin also faintly worried. When he was on the mountain yesterday, he saw Cheng Chumo and others fiddling with that thing. If it was done by Ma Zhou and others, it might be possible. But if it was done by these careless people, how could it be done? To think that Zhang Feng could actually joke about this matter. Li Shimin didn't feel anything before, but now he thought about it. This seemed to be a bit too hasty. At this time, among the ministers, some stood out one after another. Even some of the generals stood out at this time to ask for the decree. This undoubtedly made those who had not felt a deep pressure. Li Shimin rubbed his forehead with a headache. "Prime Minister Wei, what do you think of this matter?" Wei Zheng hesitated for a moment and said, "Your Majesty, in my opinion, this subject also has some doubts. After all, Mr. Wang of the Minister of Agriculture said there is no problem at all. At this time, there is no trace of phosphate fertilizer at all. I have received a lot of memorials asking about this matter in the past 2 days." While speaking, Wei Zheng glanced at Fang Xianling. Fang Xianling stammered, "Your Majesty, in the past 2 days, the Secretariat has also received a lot of memorials from various provinces. They are all about this matter. Although I have been delaying this matter, it is not the case." So I also want to ask your majesty, please send someone to ask about this phosphate fertilizer. So did Yu Qigong and others. Li Shimin was a little speechless. He stared at them and said angrily, in my opinion, this is what you want to ask, right? Don't think that I don't know what you have been doing during this time. Li Shimin rubbed his forehead and then said, there is no need to report about this matter. I will deal with it at my own discretion. If there is nothing else, the court is dismissed. After Li Shimin finished speaking, he ran away. He didn't want to stay a moment longer. The original process was to wait for the officials to send him off, but the officials looked at Li Shimin in astonishment. They couldn't help but be dumbfounded. What was the emperor going to do? After Li Shimin left, the officials immediately crowded around. Prime Minister Wei. Prime Minister Wei, Mr. Fong, Lord Zhongsun, wait. How could they not know what the crowd meant? But at this time, seeing that they couldn't leave, they had to bite the bullet and say, everyone, this is not the place to talk. How about going to Chang, an hotel today to talk while we talk? Chapter 1567. On the Vermilion Bird Avenue. In an hotel. One could see it almost every 100 feet. It was not because Li Chengqian and the others had many sideline jobs. It was because the Hongwen Guan, the Imperial College, and the people from Guanlong had a share of the pie. Moreover, Zhang Feng had agreed to it, and the result was that the streets of Chang were filled with such hotels. Almost all the original restaurants had disappeared. Everyone was trying their best to go to the Chang hotel to learn skills secretly. But even so, it was of no use. They still could not stop the hot business. When everyone came to their senses, they found that these few hotels had almost monopolized the food and beverage market in Chang city. Now, the pork that almost everyone in Chang city hated before, no one knew how Dean Zhang Feng made it. There was no fishy smell at all. The most important thing was that outside the city, there was news of a divine pig's interview coming out of nowhere. In an instant, everyone was in an uproar. And Zheng Tufu, who had been selling meat in the East Market all his life, changed his profession at this time. He went to fiddle with some pig feed and a new breed of pig called crossbreed. In an instant, the whole court was shocked. Everyone was in an uproar. For a moment, everyone was stunned. They were completely dumbfounded. At this time, Wei Jing, Zhang Sun Wuji, and the others had booked the most conspicuous restaurant outside the Vermilion Bird Avenue. It was originally called Maple Forest Pavilion. It was a famous restaurant in Chang city. But it fell into the hands of Zhang Sun Chong and the others. It became the largest Chang hotel in Chang. The hotel was divided into 3 floors. It could accommodate hundreds of people at the same time. But at this time, they had already received the news from the higher-ups. A group of people was driven out to receive the 100 important officials. Anyway, it was their own business. It was free to eat. And most importantly, it could improve their relationship. Why wouldn't he do it? In any case, this restaurant alone was worth a year of their salary. At this time, after Wei Zheng, Zhang Sun Wuji, and the others raised their glasses and made a toast, Wei Zheng said, everyone, everyone. In an instant, the officials quieted down. They were not here to drink today. They were here to ask about the phosphate fertilizer. After all, the phosphate fertilizer issue had caused a huge uproar. Moreover, the family had long been in an uproar. Every time he returned home, the shrew at home would be by his ear, buzzing like a fly in the latrine. At this time, when Wei Jing spoke, everyone immediately pricked up their ears and waited. Seeing this, Wei Jing patted Zhang Sun Wuji's shoulder and said, Lord Zhang Sun and Lord Fong should personally explain it to you. While speaking, Zhang Sun Wuji made a fist and palm salute and said, everyone, the phosphate fertilizer issue is being dealt with on the mountain. When the site at the foot of the mountain is built, it will be dealt with. As for the river on Longsho Mountain, haven't you noticed that the water leading to the Longsho Canal has increased recently and is extremely turbid? Hearing this, everyone really thought of this point. Not to mention the Longsho Canal. At this time, the water in the canal from the Longsho Canal to the Imperial City and Chang city was dim yellow. No one knew what it was doing. At this time, hearing Zhang Sun Wuji's words, everyone seemed to think of something. Minister Wang of the agricultural temple hurriedly asked. Lord Xianxia, do you mean that the canal is being renovated on the river? And the people who are digging for the phosphate fertilizer plant are dispersed? If so, just say the word and I'll transfer some people to you tomorrow. Xianxia Wuji smiled and waved his hand, lying on the guardrail on the second floor, and said, No, the fortifications are also being built on the river, but the old man doesn't know what exactly they are doing. But I heard that they are doing something related to the phosphate fertilizer plant. Once that thing is done, and the site is repaired, there will be a steady flow of phosphate fertilizer. According to the preliminary estimation, the daily capacity should be about 500 don. 500 don? 500 don? Phosphate fertilizer? Hiss. The officials couldn't help but gasp. The burning in their eyes became more serious. Lord Xianxia, how do you plan to distribute the 500 don of phosphate fertilizer? This was the plan they wanted to know the most. 500 don was not much, but it was not little. Once this thing was really done, the sale and other matters would have to be dealt with by Feng Zi. In particular, he didn't know how to use it, so he had to wait for Feng Zi. At this time, Xianxia Wuji saw that everyone was in high spirits, but he didn't know what was going on. He just thought for a while and said, This matter has to be decided by His Majesty. Let's wait for the phosphate fertilizer plant to be built first. This time, we only have one thing to do, that is to go to the prefectures to look for phosphate fertilizer mines. Only in this way can we complete the Emperor's order faster and finish the phosphate fertilizer matter within this year. What do you think? Hearing this, what could the officials say? Lord Xianxia, the Emperor's brother-in-law, said so. What could they say? They could only agree. We will definitely obey the Emperor's order. Xianxia Wuji heard this and waved his hand, saying, Come on, it's rare for so many of us to gather here today. Let's have a good drink. Chapter 1568. At the same time, in Tai Chi Palace, Li Yuan was playing poker in boredom. While watching the palace attendants and beautiful concubines singing and dancing, he could not help but feel a little fed up. Although the music played was the laughter of the vast sea that Zhang Feng made at the Mid-Autumn Festival Poetry Meet that day, but listening to it at that time still made one's blood boil. But listening to it every day, in addition to the little eunuchs, those guards, and then to the palace attendants and concubines dance, directly made Li Yuan vomit. Listening to it made him vomit. Just at this time, someone reported that Li Shimin had arrived. In an instant, Li Yuan's eyes lit up, and he hurriedly dismissed everyone. After tidying up his clothes, he drank tea and waited for Li Shimin's arrival. Son greets imperial father. Every day of paying respects, it was almost always Xianxia and Wugo who came alone, and Li Shimin had not come here for a long time. When he arrived at this time, Li Yuan knew that Li Shimin had something to do. Waving his hand, he said, Quickly get up, sit, sit, sit. You haven't come for a long time? How is it, the matter of Chang? And have you investigated clearly? Li Shimin nodded. Looking at the tea that Li Yuan personally poured for him, he said, Imperial father, this matter has been investigated clearly, it is Duke Chen. Originally, Li Shimin wanted to see Li Yuan's reaction, but after Li Shimin finished speaking, Li Yuan just paused the teapot in his hand and gently shook his head. I have long guessed that there are not many people in the court who can be so familiar with the matters of the court, as well as be able to figure out people's hearts. You see Wei Jing, Xianxia Wuji, as well as Fang Xianling and Du Ruhui, there are only a few people who can be so capable. Who do you think would be in the military if they are familiar with the matters in the military and have connections with those big clans? Li Jing is always stationed in Yuzhou province. At this moment he could only use Yuqi, Qing Yaojin, Niu Jinda and Qin Shubao. However, these people are closely related to Feng Zi. Given their intelligence, they could not play such a trick. Additionally, those big clans hate them most. Do you think that you can associate with them? Only now did Li Shimin finally realize what was going on. No wonder that Brat Fengzi was suspicious of Ho Junji. If we had thought about it a little more, we would have understood. But we always felt that he was a good person, and a kind one at that. I'm low-key, I'm not that kind of person. As he spoke, Li Shimin could not help but shake his head with a bitter smile. Seeing this, Li Yuan sighed and said, "This is what they call, those who are closely involved can't see clearly. It's also called, blind under the light. Alright, let's put this matter aside for now. Don't be too distressed. After all, this old fellow still has some conscience and didn't drag down the court when he left." Li Shimin nodded. He truly did rejoice in this matter. But Ho Junji was probably thinking more about protecting his family and his reputation. Using death to exchange for a reputation. This was a business transaction. In the end, he had lost. "Imperial Father, do you think that this matter needs to be investigated further?" Li Yuan smiled as he sipped his tea and pointed at the nearby lake. "Remember what Feng Zi once said? Water can carry a boat, but it can also capsize it. Let's put this matter to rest. Let's take it slow." Li Shimin saw that the two most important people to him had said so. At this time, he finally sighed deeply and temporarily put aside the dissatisfaction in his heart. After all, as an emperor, it was quite humiliating for him to be fooled by an official. The most important thing at this time was to do as Zhang Feng had said. First, he would swap out. Once the war on the border was over, he could nibble away at them one by one. After all, at that time, he would have plenty of elite soldiers and even more weapons. Only by sending the soldiers out of Chiotzi city back to the capital would he be able to ensure peace. At this moment, Li Yuan said, "That's right, I heard that an incredible thing has appeared outside the city. Have you heard of it?" Li Shimin was taken aback. He hurriedly said, "Imperial Father, please dispel my confusion." Li Yuan was somewhat speechless. He said, "I heard that there's a new hybrid pig outside the city, and there's also something called pig feed. I also heard that those pigs don't have the slightest fishy smell, and they can produce several pounds of meat a day." Li Shimin was taken aback by these words. He said in surprise, "This seems to be something that Feng Zi came up with?" Li Yuan narrowed his eyes and said, "Tell me, is this something that Feng Zi came up with?" I was just wondering what that brat wanted the masons of the palace for. So it was to tinker with this thing. We were still worried that after we finished eating this pork, we would be able to eat such delicious pork again. I didn't think that this brat would really be able to. Let's go, let's go. We haven't left the palace for a long time. Let's go out to relax and take a look at that thing." Li Yuan couldn't sit still anymore. He got up and walked outside. He didn't forget to call Li Shimin along. But how could Li Shimin be in the mood at this time? He hurriedly said, "Imperial Father, this son still has many things to do. What things are so important? Come out of the palace with us to relax. Look at you. You can't even understand this. If you continue like this, how will you handle government affairs?" Li Shimin saw that he couldn't refuse. He could only smile bitterly and said, "Then, it's all up to Imperial Father." "Good, that's right. Let's go out of the palace. Let's go out of the palace." Chapter 1569. In Chang'an City. At this time, the sun was shining on the earth. Along with the sound of gongs, it also announced that the morning market in the east and west markets had opened. All kinds of peddlers were entering the east and west markets in an endless stream. With the increase of the peddlers, the market was full of people at this time. Except for those places that were burned into ruins. At this time, the ruins of Chang'an City were being cleaned up quickly, but there were still large areas of ruins waiting, but this did not affect the trade. Groups of peddlers stood on the edge of the ruins, showing their goods, and then squatting on the ground to take a nap. Li Shimin and Li Yuan, still in disguise, sat in the carriage, enjoying the liveliness along the way and chatting. At this time, their carriage slowly passed by the door of the largest and most gorgeous Chang'an hotel. Li Shimin pointed to the hotel and said, "Father is here. The congratulatory gift is the largest and most luxuriously decorated place in Chang'an City. It's the property of Zhang Suan's son. Why don't we go and eat now?" Li Yuan squinted and touched his beard. At this time, there were countless guards standing at the entrance of the hotel, and in the alley behind the restaurant, there were countless people in palanquins. He could not help but ask in surprise, "Is there something big here today?" Li Shimin was stunned and said, "No." "Then why does it look like the palanquins of various officials?" Hearing this, Li Shimin was startled and hurriedly leaned against the window to take a look. With this look, he also discovered the palanquins. He hurriedly waved his hand and said, "Little Geezy, go take a look. Who is inside and what is going on?" While speaking, little Geezy hurriedly ran away, and the palanquins were still going out of the city. After a while, little Geezy hurriedly came and said, "Your Majesty, retired Emperor, at this time, several Guogong are appeasing the officials, asking them to supervise the search for phosphate fertilizer in each state." Li Shimin and Li Yuan heard this and could not help but look at each other. They did not say anything. But Xiao Geezy said, "Later, several dukes will personally come to explain this matter to His Majesty and retired Emperor." The dukes said. Li Shimin waved his hand and said, "All right, we understand." Li Shimin's voice was a little cold. At this time, it was the time for them to be on duty. Yet all the officials were here. Moreover, he was caught red-handed by the retired emperor. How could this not make Li Shimin angry? Along the way, Li Shimin and Li Yuan did not speak another word. After waiting for a while, their palanquins slowly left Chang'an City. As soon as they left the city, the two of them couldn't help but be stunned. It was because at this moment, they actually heard sounds that were even more complicated than those in the city, as well as waves of shouts. The two of them were somewhat astonished. Could it be that they had returned to the eastern and western markets? The two of them parted the curtains and were stunned. They were indeed outside the city. It was just similar to the market of a small town. However, at this time, almost all the people in the market were running to one place with large baskets in their arms. Some people even used handcarts to drag pig cages. Among them, pigs of different sizes were groaning in the cages. And the most important thing was that each and every one of them was fat and strong. This is a pig? Li Yuan could not help but be surprised. Li Shimin was also a little confused. This was the first time he had seen the kind of pig that had been cultivated. Before, he had only heard Zhang Feng say that this method could screen out pigs that were qualified enough. Then, after countless times of cultivation, the strong pigs were screened out and the next generation was cultivated. After repeating this 3 times, the pigs basically did not have a fishy smell, and the pigs could be, but he, Li Shimin, had never seen it before. And there were so many of them. At this time, at a glance, in this small market, apart from more than half of the people, there were only these big fat pigs running all over the ground. Were these pigs turned into spirits? Or could this pig really be so big? The two of them could not help but be interested. They slowly walked down from the carriage, smelling the smell of pickled pig dung in the air, and asked the person beside them with a smile, "Little brother, where are you going?" The man was carrying a large basket on his back. In the basket, there was a pig that was happily trying to break free from its restraints. The man wiped the cold sweat on his forehead and said, "Looking at the two of you, you should also be here for this thing, right? What a coincidence, the town's Jingtufu just happened to have a pig out today. Why don't we go and take a look?" Jingtufu? Could it be a butcher? Li Shimin instantly thought of the time when they were on the mountain, and when Zhang Feng received the imperial edict and invited the neighbors to a banquet, which forthright man. "Father, why don't we go and take a look?" Hearing this, Li Yuan was also interested. This kind of thing was really rare. And the thing that Zhang Feng made, he had to go and take a look no matter what. The two of them immediately abandoned the carriage. Under the escort of little Geezy and a group of Jinwu guards disguised as servants, they slowly walked in with the crowd. And at this time, Wei Zhang and the others who changed their clothes also hurried over and hurriedly caught up with Li Shimin and Li Yuan. "Greetings to the second master, greetings to the old master." Li Shimin snorted, glanced at the few people and said, "Let's talk about it later. First, let's go and see what Feng Zi made and see what it is." Chapter 1570. Several people heard this. They couldn't help but be stunned. Feng Zi still didn't seem to have come up with anything good for a long time. What Zhang Feng did during this period of time, they almost all knew. Could it be that this kid came up with some new tricks behind their backs? Really unkind. Looking at the pigs all over the ground, and even sometimes, the pigs rubbed against people, several people hurriedly clustered around Li Shimin and Li Yuan in fright. Yu Qigong shouted angrily, "Damn, whose pig is this? How can such filthy things be allowed to wander about on the streets? In an instant, the people on the street were all stunned. Li Yuan stared at Yu Qigong somewhat speechlessly. What are you shouting for? Isn't this exactly what we want? Only this way can we really be happy with the people. Hearing this, Yu Qigong shrunk his neck and hurriedly hid behind Wei Zheng, not daring to speak. Yo, isn't this Laoli? At this moment, following Yu Qigong's roar, some acquaintances seemed to have recognized Li Shimin. In an instant, the Jinwu guards hurriedly went on alert. Li Shimin also looked at the person who came. The person who came was dressed coarsely, his exposed big belly was dripping with sweat at this time. Behind him was a large handcart, pulling a large cart of unknown things. Li Shimin thought deeply for a while before he couldn't help but say, "You're Zheng Tufu?" Hearing this, that person laughed and said, "Isn't it me? Why didn't I see Feng Zi today? You guys are..." The person who came was Zheng Tufu. Only at this time, although Zheng Tufu's whole body was still black and shiny, but his face had a rosy color, and the clothes on his body were no longer the rough linen clothes from before. Instead, he changed into a decent set of silk clothes. Seeing Li Shimin and the others looking at him, Zheng Tufu wiped the sweat off his forehead. He took out a bag from the handcart and pulled out a handful of cigarettes. He greeted them one by one and dispersed the smoke. Then he said, "What are you doing here?" When Yu Qigong saw this, he said, "Didn't I hear that Feng Zi has made a name for himself here? That's why I came to take a look. Weren't you slaughtering pigs at the food factory before? Why are you shopping here?" Zheng Tufu waved his hand and said, "What purchase? Didn't Feng Zi ask me to come here to do this pig business?" While they were talking, a sow with a group of piglets shuttled through the crowd in a panic under the urging of a woman. The pig was about to touch Li Shimin. Zheng Tufu panicked and grabbed the few of them. Come. My house is just ahead. Let's go in and talk. This place is really not a place for honorable guests. I think the thing you're looking for should be what I'm working on right now." Li Shimin had heard Li Yuan mention it before he came. Seeing the situation now, the few of them were really annoyed by this scene. Then they pulled the handcart together with Zheng Tufu. With the help of the Jinwu guards, they finally managed to move the cart of things into the house with great difficulty. The house was not big. It was the kind of house of a village. But relatively speaking, it still had some facade. There was even a gilded sign hanging on the door of the house. The words, "Zheng Residence," were written on it. The few of them entered the house. They were instantly stunned by the scene in the house. In the courtyard of the mansion, there were sacks of things piled up everywhere. Most importantly, these sacks were emitting bursts of fragrances. It smelled like bran and also like oil residue. The courtyard of the house was not like that of an ordinary house. There were sheds built in the courtyard of the house. These sacks were stacked in these sheds, leaving only a narrow passage. At this time, there were sounds of bargaining coming from the courtyard from time to time. There were also piles of things being moved out, as well as sacks of things being moved out. At this moment, everyone saw that the sack was filled with things that were a little bigger than soybeans. The fragrance was coming from these things. When everyone saw Zheng Tufu, they all greeted him. Zheng Tufu was also forthright. He cupped his hands in salute to everyone and ordered the servants to move the things on the handcart in. After that, Zheng Tufu then led Li Shimin and the others into the living room. As soon as they entered, Zheng Tufu shouted at the top of his voice, "Old woman, the noble is here. Quickly make tea." While speaking, Zheng Tufu hurriedly asked the few of them to sit down. Then he said with a smile, "Everyone is a little negligent. The things in this courtyard were made by Feng Zi and Dr. Sunday. It's called fodder." Li Yuan was a little curious. "I know about this fodder. We know about this craftsman. We know about pigs and so on. But what are they doing?" Zheng Tufu suddenly understood. He slapped his forehead and said, "Oh, you're talking about this. You've seen those pigs on the street, right? Those things came from me. I don't kill pigs to sell meat now. I've changed to raising sows." "Ha, how about it?" Li Shimin did not care about this at this time. He asked, "I heard that these pigs can produce meat in less than 3 months?" Zheng Tufu heard this and smiled mysteriously. Go. Let's go take a look at my pigs. You'll know." Hearing this, Li Shimin and Li Yuan both stood up. However, they were hurriedly stopped by Wei Zheng. Great master, second master, how can you go to such a place? I'll go take a look. How about it? Chapter 1571. Li Shimin heard that. He hesitated a little. This thing could indeed be considered as pickled meat. However, if it could really be produced in 3 months, it would be another blessing for the Tang dynasty. Now, the main meat of the Tang dynasty and the whole world almost came from sheep, and this lamb needed a year to grow. An adult lamb only had 15 to 50 caddies of meat. This was still good. This little bit of meat. What could it do? How much would it be in a year? However, if this pig could really be produced in 3 months, on the one hand, it could solve the selectivity of the Tang dynasty in meat, and thus it would also become an income for the Tang dynasty to export to foreign countries. Moreover, after Zhang Feng's operation, at this time, this meat had already been accepted by the princes, dukes, and ministers. It had become the most important meat besides cattle, sheep, and horse meat. The main thing was that it was cheap. Moreover, the meat was not as rough as cattle and mutton. Thinking of this, Li Shimin waved his hand and said, "It's just a pig. What's there to be afraid of?" Moreover, Fengzi spent so much time tinkering with it. I also want to see what's so great about it. Li Yuan also followed Jing Tufu early. With a cigarette in his mouth, he left one after the other, laughing loudly. Everyone was also speechless and could only hurriedly follow. The house was not big. When they came out of the back hall, they could hear the sound of pigs snorting. Moreover, it was not just 1 or 2 sounds. Listening to the sound, it seemed that many pigs were clamoring. The suffocating smell of feces that went straight to the top of their heads directly made them feel a sense of suffocation. However, the few of them endured it and plunged headfirst into the cave. In the backyard, there were about 15 very small pig houses separated. This pattern was similar to the gray building on Shao Mountain, and a few of them were glossy and smooth. At first glance, those pigs were as long as mules that had shed their hair. Yu Qigong visually measured the pigs and then looked at the carrying pole beside them. He suddenly felt that the pigs seemed to be longer than the carrying pole. This time, Li Shimin and the others were completely dumbfounded. This pig, it was really big. And the most important thing was, this pig was as strong as a calf. At this moment, it was lying on the edge of a wooden trough, eating the feed in the trough while playing with the trough. Yu Qigong looked at the pig in disbelief. He looked at it and said, "Old Zheng, tell me honestly, how long have you been rearing this pig? This pig looks to be more than 100 kilograms, right?" Jing Tufa laughed proudly. Then, he said mysteriously, "I brought these pigs down from the mountain a month ago. Taking everything into account, these pigs have grown from piglets to this size in just 2 months." Hearing this, Li Shimin and Li Yuan couldn't help but raise their eyebrows. 3 months? Could it be like this in 3 months? If these pigs were all grown up, wouldn't it mean that everyone in Chang and could afford to eat meat? And this meat could also become the main export product of the Tang dynasty? Thinking of this, Li Shimin was very excited. It took a long time for him to recover. So did Li Yuan. As for Yu Qigong and the others, they were still disdainful a moment ago, but now, they were directly lying on the pigsty, looking at these pigs. What was this? This was walking money. It was rare for them to eat meat in their mansions. It was not that they couldn't afford it, but there were very few people selling meat. Even if there were occasionally people selling pork and dog meat in the past, who would eat that kind of meat except for the lower class? But now, this meat, if it really didn't have a fishy smell, then 10 copper coins per kilogram? 10 copper coins? This was all money. And they had many mansions. If they took out any one of them, wouldn't they raise hundreds of pigs in a year? It could be said that everyone present at this time was thinking in their hearts. This was all money. After showing off for a while, Jing Tufu waved his hand and said, "Okay, gentlemen, let's go to the front yard. After all, it's a little dirty here. Let's go to the front yard and talk while eating? Today, I prepared some good things. Originally, I hid them for Fengzi, but that kid didn't come to me at all. Today, I'll borrow your good fortune to have a taste of this tasteless meat." At this time, Li Shimin and the others' thoughts were no longer on eating and drinking, but on thinking about this pig. Now, the trade of the Tang dynasty was basically focused on tea, silk, and porcelain. If this pork really did not have a fishy smell and could be popularized in the Tang dynasty, then in less than a year, this thing was destined to become the fourth largest economy in the Tang dynasty. At that time, the matter of Xianxia would be settled. When the world was awed, this thing would be pushed out at the same time. Thinking of this, Li Shimin patted Zheng Tufu's shoulder and said, "Old Zheng, tell me, can these pigs really grow so big in 3 months?" Zheng Tufu was a little confused. "So I didn't say it in detail just now? Come, let's talk about this fodder first." Once again, Zheng Tufu explained the feed to him. Immediately, Li Shimin could no longer suppress the heat in his eyes. He patted Zheng Tufu's shoulder heavily and said, "Old Zheng, do you want to make a fortune?" Chapter 1572. Zheng Tufu was dumbfounded by the words, "Do you want to make a fortune?" Wei Zheng and the others were also dumbfounded. Wasn't this Zhang Feng's catchphrase? How did His Majesty learn it? Most importantly, how did he say it so naturally? Zheng Tufu was a little dumbfounded, but he knew that these people were all big shots and were Zhang Feng's brothers. White Deer College was built by these people through their connections. Otherwise, with Feng Zi's family background, he might be able to build something like this even if he emptied his pockets. Zheng Tufu laughed dryly and invited them into the central room. As soon as they entered the central room, Zheng Tufu said, "We're standing in Feng Zi's light, so we'll call you Master Li." Although Feng Zi once said that I and that fellow Ma Zhou would be responsible for getting the pig out to feed the common people. But no matter what, this thing belongs to Feng Zi. It's useless for you to tell me. I know that this thing can make a lot of money, but I can't read and don't know anything. Why don't you ask Feng Zi? In the end, Zheng Tufu was just working for Feng Zi. If it was a normal pig business, he could make the decision for 10 or even 100 pigs. However, he didn't dare to do business with Lao Li. After all, how could an ordinary commoner like him be able to befriend a merchant who could afford to build an academy and had an important relationship with the court? Therefore, Zheng Tufu did not even think about it and rejected it. Li Shimin didn't expect such a solution and was a little dumbfounded. In his opinion, this trick had always worked with Feng Zi. Every time Feng Zi said that he could make money, whether he wanted to make money or not, he was destined to come up with something amazing. But now, why did he miscalculate here? Li Shimin even began to wonder if he had done something wrong. "Ahem, second master, someone is looking for you outside." At this moment, Wei Zheng coughed hurriedly and interrupted Li Shimin's thoughts. Li Shimin was stunned. "What's the matter?" Wei Zheng glanced at Zheng Tufu and said, "Just now, someone from home said that our herbal field in Longyu was robbed." What? Li Shimin was shocked. Only a few of them knew about the herbal field that Wei Zheng was talking about. How could there be a herbal field? It was just an excuse. But now that Wei Zheng said this, could it be? Li Shimin's face couldn't help but darken. He hurriedly got up and said, "Sorry for disturbing you today. Let's meet again another day. Old Feng, Old Wei, you two go to the mountain and tell Feng Zi about this matter. As for these pigs, I plan to buy them after our phosphate fertilizer factory opens. At that time, there will definitely be high-ranking officials and dignitaries, as well as merchants from all over the country. At that time, our chance to make a fortune will really come." After that, Li Shimin left in a hurry. Zheng Tufu looked at Zheng Tufu. When he Tufu, Zheng Tufu's wife happened to be carrying plates of fragrant dishes. But when she saw that he Tufu was gone, she was instantly stunned. "I say, master, where is he?" Zheng Tufu shrugged and said, "He's gone." "What?" the woman exclaimed and looked at the dishes in her hands. Looking at the real butcher's expectant eyes, she covered the dishes with her sleeves and carried them back to the kitchen. Zheng Tufu looked and was dumbfounded. He hurriedly shouted, "Old woman, what are you doing? The dishes are ready. Won't it be a waste if you don't eat them? What else do you know besides eating? If you want to eat, wait for me. Call father and mother over. This is what I prepared for Feng Zi." On the other side, as soon as Li Shimin came out of the house, he asked, "What happened?" Wei Zheng looked around. Yu Qigong and the others, either intentionally or unintentionally, also surrounded Li Shimin. He said, His Majesty has just received news from Yuzhou that a large number of Tujue troops from Feng Province, Xing Province, two places have suddenly deployed their troops and are now stationed less than 10 li outside the city. When Li Shimin heard this, his face instantly changed. Feng Province and Xing Province were places where the Turks intersected. Because these two places were not that important and were separated by the Great Wall Fortress, the Turks would not come here under normal circumstances. It was also the main defense line of Chang. But at this time, why would Tuli Khan do this at this juncture? Li Shimin was a little confused. He asked, "Is there anything unusual on the Qiuzi side? And how many soldiers are there in these two places?" Wei Zheng said with a grave expression, "There are only 50,000 soldiers in total. But according to the spies, these 50,000 soldiers are the best of the best. As for the Qiuzi side, they are still in a standoff." 50,000, Li Shimin's expression turned grave. It had only been 3 days since the incident with Ho Junji, but could this have been planned long ago? Li Shimin couldn't help but feel a headache coming on. At this time, what he feared the most was this kind of deterrence. If Feng Zi's cannons were ready, then everything would be fine. But now, Feng Zi had only just begun to prepare. "This battle," Li Yuan indifferently said, "let's go back first. We'll talk about it when we get back." Chapter 1573. At the entrance of the Imperial Study. By the time Li Shimin arrived, everyone from the military had already arrived. Everyone was waiting anxiously. Seeing Li Shimin arrive, everyone hurriedly bowed. "Your Majesty! Your Majesty, Feng Province and Xing Province are in a state of emergency. Just now, Tuli Khan sent a letter of credence." Li Shimin's face was extremely gloomy. He waved his sleeves and sat down on the dragon throne. "Where's the letter of credence?" Hearing this, Xiao Gizi hurriedly took out a scroll made of sheepskin from a small eunuch's tray and handed it to Li Shimin. Li Shimin slowly unfolded it. However, after reading the contents, he was so angry that his whole body trembled. Preposterous! This is simply preposterous. Do they really think there's no one in the Tang dynasty? Yuqigong's body trembled when he heard this. He hurriedly said, "Your Majesty! Order the garrison in Chang, Luozhou, and all other garrisons to reinforce the two places. I don't believe that we can't defeat the enemy with all the forces in the Guanyi and Hedong provinces." Li Shimin's rage shocked everyone. Wei Zheng hurriedly stopped him. "Your Majesty, you can't. Your Majesty, you see, there's a shortage of food in the country right now. All the people are preparing for the autumn planting. If we start a war at this time, it'll cause poverty and increase taxes. All the people in the country will have to pay for the autumn planting this year. Your Majesty, please reconsider." Fang Xianling and Du Ruhui also hurriedly stepped forward and said, "Your Majesty, we feel that this matter needs to be discussed properly. If we start a war now, it'll only bring harm to the Tang dynasty. Since Tuli Khan can declare war at this time, it means that he's been planning this for a long time. He's forcing us to send out troops." "Your Majesty, enough!" Li Shimin angrily slammed the table and threw the letter of credence on the table at Wei Zheng. "Go and read it. Read what that old bastard Tuli said." Wei Zheng hurriedly grabbed the letter of credence on the floor and read it carefully. This letter of credence was not written in the Turkic language. Instead, it was written in the language of the Han people. It first boasted that the Turks wanted to celebrate the Chinese New Year in Chang and city, and other nonsense words. Then, it said that the Tang dynasty wanted 3 million dan of grain, as well as hundreds of thousands of military horses purchased from the Turks. And even directly marrying a princess to Tuli as a show of sincerity. That wasn't all. It also said that the people of the Tang dynasty had to give the Turks salt, the recipe for braised meat, and dozens of other things. Among them, the most important things were the things that Zhang Feng came up with, such as the bone regeneration technique and the blood transfusion technique, which was also the blood transfusion technique that Zhang Feng mentioned. There was also the salt, military affairs, psychology, and especially the things from White Deer College that had to be packed up and brought over. At this moment, Wei Zheng and the others were aghast. As they looked at the heavy letter of credence, They couldn't help but break out in cold sweat. This wasn't a letter of credence. This was a national humiliation. This was simply going too far. No wonder the emperor was so angry. No one could bear it. This is too much of a bully. Chen Yaojin angrily tore the letter of credence and knelt down on one knee. Your Majesty, this subject requests that Your Majesty bestow 100,000 soldiers and horses. No, 80,000 is enough. This subject will go and destroy him. Your Majesty, this subject is also willing to go. Your Majesty, send the troops. At this moment, Wei Jing couldn't persuade Zhang Sun Wuji. Seeing that he was still squinting, he hurriedly said, Lord Jing, say something. At this moment, Li Shimin also saw Zhang Sun Wuji and said, Zhang Sun, tell us your opinion. Zhang Sun Wuji heard this and said, Your Majesty, this subject thinks that the most important thing now is to seek peace. Li Shimin frowned slightly. Wei Zheng and the others also frowned. However, Yu Qigong and Qing Yaojin were in an uproar. They cursed Zhang Sun Wuji for being a spineless person. Li Shimin's expression changed slightly. In an instant, Qing Yaojin and Yu Qigong were like frightened rabbits, and their voices came to an abrupt halt. Minister Zhang Sun, tell us your opinion. Your Majesty, this subject thinks that the most important thing now is to seek peace. The Turkic Khaganate is suffering from internal strife and the plague of locusts. Seeing that winter is coming, this Tuli Khan definitely won't dare to start a war at this time. This time, he came to these two places to ask for Your Majesty's help, but he can't bring himself to do so, so. Li Shimin heard this. His eyebrows twitched wildly. At this moment, Zhang Sun Wuji's words seemed to have opened a small window for him. Due to the plague of locusts, snow, and famine, the Turkic Khaganate had caused internal strife among the tribes. Under Zhang Feng's strategy, almost half of the Turkic Khaganate's warhorses had been bought over. Who wouldn't be anxious if this happened to them? Winter was coming soon. Once winter came, a large number of Turkic Khaganates would die of hunger and cold. Therefore, at this time, the Tuli Khan's actions could be considered to have found an opportunity. At the thought of this, Li Shimin's mood instantly calmed down. Chapter 1574. My beloved subjects, we feel that we need to discuss this matter further. Yu Qigong panicked when he heard that. Your Majesty, what else is there to discuss? Everything is clear. That old thief Tuli is seizing the opportunity to extort and blackmail us. If we continue to hesitate, perhaps this is all part of that old thief Tuli's scheme. By the time we continue to discuss this matter, perhaps Sheng Province and Feng Province will already be gone. Your Majesty, Old Man Yuchi is right. If we continue to discuss this matter, they might even be laughing at us in that tent right now. What are we waiting for? We need to hurry and send out our troops. Your Majesty, enough. Somewhat annoyed, Li Shimin waved his hand and said, This matter will be discussed at the morning court tomorrow. Afterwards, we will make a final decision. Yu Qigong, Qing Yaojin, I order the two of you to quickly and secretly send spies to Feng Province and Sheng Province to investigate the situation. At the same time, send a message to Niu Jinda. The battle at Chiotzi cannot be delayed for even a moment. The fortifications must be stabilized. The few of them couldn't help but tremble. They hastily bowed. They hastily withdrew. Once the army had left, only then did Li Shimin stare blankly at the detailed and accurate map on the wall of the imperial study. From Chang and to Guanyi Dao Dao and these two places, it would only take 3 days to get there. That is to say, 3 days. That is, 3 days is the time this Gij Ho Junji died. That is to say, this Tuli also interacted with that Ho Junji? Then what about Xieli? Li Shimin couldn't help but think about everything that had happened in Tubo, Tuyuhun, India, and the Turkic Khaganate. Now that he connected the dots with this Ho Junji, he suddenly realized that these people and matters really did seem to be connected by some unknown thread. Was someone really behind all of this? This person. It seemed that Ho Junji, Li Shimin deeply sighed. When Wei Jing saw this, he hurriedly asked, Your Majesty, did you discover something? Li Shimin nodded. Prime Minister Wei, do you still remember Helan Mountain? In an instant, Wei Jing understood. On this map, That year, it was because of Wuxia that the Xiongnu were broken up in one battle, which resulted in the current Turks and Huaiji. But at this moment, why did Tuli choose this place instead of other places? What was his purpose? One must know that the Xiongnu were the ancestors of the Turks. With that old bastard Tuli Khan's crafty character, if he did not have any other intentions, how could he set up the battlefield in two places at the same time? Moreover, it was a taboo for military strategists to divide their forces into two. He was all too familiar with Tuli's character. Moreover, as soon as he set up the battle array, he began to write the letter of credence. What was he doing? This was clearly a form of pressure. At this time, the only thing that was fighting at the border was none other than the Qiuzi side. At this time and place, the Qiuzi side was still in a deadlock. If Li Shimin's guess was correct, the Qiuzi side should have received the news at the same time as Tuli's letter of credence. At the thought of this, Li Shimin's expression became even more gloomy. It was obvious that they wanted him to divide his forces. In particular, they wanted the Qiuzi people's attention to this place. What was this place? Once they crossed the Helan Mountains, they would reach Chang and city in less than 2 days. This was all part of his plan. Li Shimin instantly lost his composure when he thought of this. At this time, Wei Jing, Fang Xianling, Zhang Sun Wuji, and Du Ruhui were also very anxious when they saw Li Shimin's expression and the map. Your Majesty, is this related to the war in Qiuzi? Finally, it was Zhang Sun Wuji who broke the silence and asked. Li Shimin nodded and said, "That's right. This is only one of the reasons. They want to divide the forces of the Tang dynasty. I suspect that these two places are just a pretense. I suspect that they have other purposes." Hearing this, they were shocked. They hurriedly looked at the place where Qiuzi and Fengzhou were. They couldn't help but fall silent. But they couldn't figure out anything. Zhang Sun Wuji hurriedly asked, "Your Majesty, we are slow-witted. Please enlighten us." Li Shimin waved his hand and said, "This matter is not urgent. Let's take it easy. By the way, I have a task for you." Hearing this, Zhang Sun Wuji hurriedly knelt and said, "Your Majesty, please enlighten us." Wei Zheng and the others also hurriedly bowed. Li Shimin said, "From now on, quickly send an envoy to negotiate with Tuli. This matter must be done as soon as possible. You go personally. Also, wait for Fang Xianling. Go to the mountain and find Fengzi in person. Don't mention this matter. Ask him to get a few more cannons and see if it works." Hearing this, the corners of their mouths twitched. His Majesty was really anxious. Although they hadn't seen the power of those cannons, since Zhang Feng said so, they must be very powerful. If 10 cannons could pacify Qiuzi, then if 5 more cannons were built, wouldn't they be able to solve the war in Fengzhou and Xingzhou as well? Thinking about it this way, at this time, they also understood the emperor's strategy. That was to first send someone to delay that old thief Tuli and wait for Zhang Feng's cannons. Once the cannons were built, everything would be fine. Chapter 1575. Compared to the turmoil in the palace, Shao Mountain regained its usual peace and tranquility. The market at the foot of the mountain was still the same as before. There were clamorous noises, fierce bargaining sounds, and the endless stream of carriages going back and forth on the straight and clean cement road. As if showing off, the carriages went away noisily. Then another group of carriages, full of goods, creaked and creaked as they came. Everything was so quiet and peaceful. The old village head was like a local tycoon, leading a group of men dressed in the uniform of White Deer Institute, strolling along the streets while carrying Qi Mei cudgels. Since the tragedy of Qian Wanli last time, at the foot of the mountain, the old village chief didn't care about the paper mill anymore. Instead, he patrolled the streets with the bailiffs and constables all day long. As soon as he noticed that something was wrong, he would immediately take action. He would interrogate it first before giving up. And on the mountain, the sound of reading rose and fell one after another. On the mountain, as usual, the students were still studying Zhang Feng's textbooks as usual. Ever since they had seen the miraculous thing known as phosphate fertilizer, all of the students seemed to have gone crazy, and they did their best to learn. Especially after seeing the big water wheel in the dormitory area, under the big waterfall, and the set of things they couldn't name with clear water that could be used at the door of the dormitory. All the students' minds were even crazier. Every day after class, all the students would run to the door of Zhang Feng's villa to watch the scene of Qin Tinyu, Fang Yi, and the others being cursed by Zhang Feng. Especially after the cursing, the dean would personally explain the principle of the windmill to them. At this moment, all the students would take out their notebooks and write down everything that Zhang Feng had said without missing a single word. This almost became the daily routine for every student to collect the dean's classic quotes. At this time, in front of Zhang Feng's villa, in front of a pile of rotten wood, Cheng Chumo and Fang Yi stood there in a daze with their heads down. And in an instant, all the students cheered, because the dean had come out. But this time it was very rare. Cheng Tinyu and the others stood there for a full hour before Zhang Feng walked out of the villa. And behind Zhang Feng, the students saw an old man. The students who came early seemed to have thought of something. This was the honorary vice principal of the academy. This time, everyone became even more excited. The person behind Zhang Feng was naturally Li Yuan, who had just been outside the city with Li Shimin. It was rare for him to leave the palace. Anyway, there were many things. Li Yuan was still looking for Zhang Feng, so he went up the mountain along the way. At this time, after Cheng Chumo saw Li Yuan, his expression became even more flustered. Li Yuan smiled as he looked at the students in the distance. After waving his hand in greeting, he stared at Cheng Chumo and said, "Iron Bull, is this the water wheel you tinkered with?" Cheng Chumo laughed embarrassedly and said, "Old master, this? And we made it." Li Yuan clicked his tongue in amazement. He looked at the huge water wheel on the lake all the way to the villa area, as well as the water troughs in the dormitory area. Then he looked at a piece of missing wood and said, "This thing is not bad." Hearing this, Zhang Feng could not help but be angry. "I say, old master, you are sincerely trying to undermine me, aren't you?" Hearing this, Li Yuan laughed and said, "No, no, no, how could this be? I was thinking, towards this guy who even their parents could not do anything to, he could actually make such a meticulous work. I really have a whole new level of respect for him." Hearing this, Zhang Feng's expression became a little better. Pointing at the wood chips on the ground, he said, "What is this?" Hearing this, Chen Chumo said, "Fengzi, take a look. This thing, I did indeed make it according to the book. But in less than 3 days, these water wheels have almost all been changed. This is not good." Zhang Feng chuckled and said, "Now you know it's not good, right?" In an instant, Zhang Feng and the others heard the sound of the students flipping through small books not far away. This scene could not help but make Li Yuan somewhat stunned. "This is," Zhang Feng said speechlessly, "this is all secretly learning. These few good-for-nothings, by the time I teach you guys, perhaps every student here would have already learned it." Cheng Chumo and the others chuckled. Turning around, they glared at the crowd. The students automatically ignored their threatening gazes, still looking at Zhang Feng with a face full of worship. The brush in their hands was also dipped in ink in a small box in their arms, waiting for Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng was somewhat speechless. "I told you guys before, if you have nothing to do, go and study the dynamics of water, as well as the transmission device of the metal car I made before. Look, this water wheel is not wrong, everything is not wrong. But have you thought of a problem, and that is the friction of objects? Go and carefully ponder what exactly is the problem with this thing. If you don't solve this problem for me today, no one can sleep tonight. Tomorrow, it will be used at the foot of the mountain, and you guys are still dawdling here for me?" Hearing this, a large amount of cold sweat instantly seeped out of their heads. They hurriedly packed up a large pile of materials and scampered away. And the students in the distance were dumbfounded. It was over? Chapter 1576. After seeing them off, Yizichen said. Only then did Zhang Feng return to the villa with Li Yuan. As soon as he entered the door, Li Yuan asked directly, "Boy, this thing is used in the phosphate fertilizer factory?" Seeing Zhang Feng nod, Li Yuan's interest was instantly piqued. He asked, "This thing, I don't see anything magical about it. What can this thing be used for?" Zhang Feng chuckled and tossed a cigarette to Li Yuan. "This is a secret. If you want to know, You can go and see for yourself when the time comes. Anyway, old master, when did you go up the mountain this time? Li Yuan spread his hands and said, I heard that you are amazing and made some amazing things. Old man came to see. Zhang Feng heard this and instantly had a headache. That's enough, old master. That thing is used to kill people. With your old arms and legs, if something happens to you, we won't be able to afford it. Zhang Feng had seen how difficult it was to deal with old Master Li. They were worthy of being father and son. However, compared to Lao Li, Zhang Feng could still deal with him. But this old Master Li, he was simply old and cunning. Moreover, this thing was made for the royal family. If he made it out, then there would be a lot of fun. That was no longer a small problem, but a big problem. At that time, if something went wrong, Zhang Feng's head would be moved. This batch of military weapons was the existence of the trump card, which determined the success or failure of the war. At this time, although Zhang Feng was extremely unwilling to make this batch of things, and because of this matter, he had to. Yu Shernan and several other great scholars had an ideological meeting for the whole night. However, Zhang Feng still persevered. First of all, as Zhang Feng said, if there was no peace in the world, how could there be peace in the country? Besides, this thing at this time, at the border, had not been completely equipped with it. Once it was leaked, it would be a great crisis. First of all, would the people of the 5 surnames and 7 clans be willing to see these things? In addition, the war was about to break out, which was also the time when spies from both sides were the most active. At this time, Zhang Feng guessed that he had been surrounded by spies on the mountain. At this time, once the old man got addicted to playing with this thing, he would be able to trick one of them away. That would really be fun. Li Yuan squinted at Zhang Feng's eyes and said with a smile, Old man, I'm just asking. Don't think too much. I still know the priorities of these things. By the way, Fengzi, let me ask you something. Last night, an old friend came to visit and told old man about the recent situation in Chang'an City. What do you want to say about this? Zhang Feng shrugged. You have to ask His Majesty about this. How would I know? Li Yuan seemed to have long known that Zhang Feng would have such a reply. He laughed mischievously, causing goosebumps all over Zhang Feng's body to fall to the ground. He stopped Li Yuan and said, Old man, do you have something to say? Nothing. It's just that the people from the Ministry of Works came to see Old Man yesterday. They heard that Old Man is the honorary vice president of White Deer College, so they asked me to repair the burned places in Chang'an City, especially the rebuilding of the 2 cities. Zhang Feng did not take it to heart. He said casually, Oh, and? I agreed, but I don't have the funds and I don't know how to build it. They want to build it in the style of these houses on the mountain, so I came up the mountain today to ask. Zhang Feng was a little speechless. These things, let him do it. How could he have the time to worry about these things? He answered directly, No time. Then what are you busy with? Li Yuan was asking. In fact, Li Yuan and Li Shimin had been thinking about this kind of house on the mountain for a long time. But they could not do anything about it. This kid just refused to relent and was not willing to hand over the drawings and the workmanship to them. This made Li Shimin and Li Yuan both angry and speechless. Speaking of which, you've already done it. Why are you still so stingy about this? When the time comes, will I give you less benefits? Li Yuan said speechlessly, The Ministry of Works has paid for it. In addition, the people from the Ministry of Works also said that the reconstruction and renovation of all places in Chang'an will be handed over to our academy. You see, this kind of good thing, you've made many people jealous. As the saying goes, it's better to be happy together than to be happy alone. You see, you're living so comfortably. If one day His Majesty is interested and comes to your academy to look at your house and then look at the prescription at the foot of the mountain, what will His Majesty say? When the time comes, if someone takes advantage of you and says that you're not willing to repair the construction of the 2 cities, how will His Majesty look at you? That's all. Shining silver. Besides, don't many students in our academy know how to do it? At this time, isn't it just right to cooperate with the Ministry of Works? 3 years later, even if your students don't have to take the imperial examination, they can directly work in the Ministry of Works. Such a good opportunity, are you willing to give it up? Think about it, when you go to the imperial court to be an official, can you still stay on the mountain for a lifetime? Are you still willing to live in that kind of dilapidated house? Zhang Feng seemed to be a little tempted. Slowly reaching out his hand, he looked at Li Yuan and said, "In that case, let's first pay for the cement to repair the dongdu." Chapter 1577. Li Yuan was instantly dumbfounded. He had long forgotten about this matter. But now that Zhang Feng mentioned it, he instantly remembered why this kid's nose was not his nose and his eyes were not his eyes when he went up the mountain. It turned out that he was thinking about this. He also remembered that it was indeed him who said that the matter of the renovation of Dongdu was repaired. At that time, it was also the time when White Deer College was being built. He originally thought that this kid had forgotten about it. He did not expect that he was still thinking about it. At that time, Li Yuan spent a lot of effort to get the manufacturing process of the cement. Then he unexpectedly made a fortune. At the very least, the paving of the streets in Chang, and City and Central City was due to the cement. Coupled with the renovation of Dongdu, Li Yuan forgot about everything that happened after that. At this time, Li Yuan heard this and laughed. "So this is what you're thinking about, kid? All right, I'll ask someone to calculate the accounts tomorrow and send the account book and money to you." "Kid, when did you become such a money grubber?" Li Yuan agreed with some pain in his heart. At this time, Zhang Feng instantly beamed with joy. "That's right. Even brothers have to settle accounts clearly, let alone our two families, right? Let's go, I'll treat you to grilled fish." Hearing that there was good food to eat, Li Yuan's eyes instantly became round. "That's good. Let's go." While talking, the two of them put their arms around each other's shoulders and walked to the lake under the waterfall under the envious eyes of Trung Chumo and the others. By the lake, people had already built fishing platforms everywhere. At this time, Yu Shernan, the old scholar, and Sun Simiao were reciting poems while fishing and tasting tea. Li Yuan almost wanted to go up and kick them. "Good fellow, such a peaceful day, and you've forgotten me? Do you really think I'm old?" The arrival of the two of them also instantly attracted the few fishing people. They quickly put down the fishing rods in their hands and stepped forward one after another. "Elderly, why didn't you send someone to inform us that you were coming?" Li Yuan chuckled and cupped his fists at everyone, saying, "Didn't I have nothing to do? I just wanted to go up the mountain to take a look. But you guys don't know what we saw on the way up?" They sat around the small teapot, and Zhang Feng was pushed out of the circle. He could only go fishing and prepare the food. As soon as they sat down, they curiously surrounded Li Yuan and asked, "Elderly, tell us, what did you see?" "That's right. You're only halfway through. You're still hanging in the air. Tell me about it. Brotherly, what exactly did you see?" In the face of their inquiry, Li Yuan glanced at Zhang Feng, then pointed in the direction of the gray building in the hatchery, and said, "This matter, we have to start from the 300,000 pigs." At that time, didn't you all wonder why this kid wanted the craftsman to go up the mountain, and then you all went silent? When I was at the foot of the mountain today, I saw a herd of pigs and lambs running around with my second son. When they heard this, they couldn't help but feel even more confused. At this time, everyone also instantly thought of Elder Gao, as well as the matter of Zhang Feng asking the crown prince to get eunuch Gao. They also thought of the matter of them questioning Zhang Feng at that time. At this time, when he heard Li Yuan say this, Yu Shernan couldn't help but ask, could it be that the kid's new breed of pig was made? Li Yuan was still a little shocked at this time and smacked his lips. "I saw it with my own eyes. The pig that was less than 3 months old was estimated to be more than 100-200 catties. This is 2 months." Hiss. When they heard this, they instantly sucked in a breath of cold air. At this time, Li Yuan looked at Sun Simiao, who seemed to have sensed something, and said, "Divine Dr. Sun, you still have a part to play in this." Several people looked at Sun Simiao at once. Sun Simiao looked at Zhang Feng, who was eavesdropping with a strange expression, then said, "At that time, it was this kid who asked the old man to go up the mountain to find some herbs as soon as the old man went up the mountain. At that time, the old man didn't know what the use of these fodder was, but in the end he found out that he added it into the nutritious porridge." Li Yuan knew about this matter. Porridge mixed with chicken, duck, and pork, plus some seasonings and herbs. Li Yuan was addicted to drinking this thing now. He had to have a bowl every morning and night. His whole body was flushed. But at this time, when Sun Simiao said this, Li Yuan instantly asked vigilantly, "Divine Dr. Sun, could it be that you want to say that the pig feed that Fengzi made this time was also made with these things?" In an instant, several people's expressions became incomparably interesting. Everyone's face suddenly became incomparably pale. This thing, until now, they would drink it every morning and night. But now, when talking about the matter of pigs, why did Sun Simiao say this? Could it be that it was really like what the retired emperor said, that this whatever feed for pigs was made from this thing? Sun Simiao saw the strange expressions of several people. Only then did he recover from his memories, waving his hand and saying, "No, no, no, you're thinking too much. What I want to say is that at that time, the old man collected more than 30 kinds of herbs, but this porridge only used less than 7 kinds of herbs." Later, the old man asked, only then did he know that this kid wanted to use this thing to make a kind of feed. At that time, the old man also didn't know what this thing was, but later on, that kid told me the truth. When several people heard this, their hearts were instantly at ease, and they breathed a deep sigh of relief. This kid is so impatient no matter what he does. Li Yuan glared at Zhang Feng. He continued, "Right, this feed, I seem to have heard about it when I was at the foot of the mountain before, and I also heard that Feng Zi once bought a large number of locusts and seemed to be making something for pigs to eat. Could it be this thing?" When he said this, he instantly got into big trouble. Yu Shernan and several people's faces instantly turned green. They angrily glared at Zhang Feng, who was preparing to slip away, and said, "Little brat, come here for the old man." Chapter 1578. Zhang Feng felt wronged. If I have to report everything to you guys, what privacy do I have left? Could it be that in your eyes, this thing really has to be placed under the sun so that it can be seen clearly? Zhang Feng was also a bachelor. He chuckled as if he didn't know anything. He strolled over and said, "Mr. Bosher, what can I do for you? The fish will be served soon. Let me ask you about the pig feed and the bone-strengthening powder you gave to the old man. Are they made of the same material?" Zhang Feng heard that and immediately became angry. Who said that? Who said that? You have to speak with a conscience. Back then, I spent a lot of money to collect locusts. Is that why? Isn't that to solve the locust problem? Although the locusts have been killed, how long will it take for people, chickens, ducks, and pigs to eat the hundreds of thousands and millions of insect corpses? Even if we eat until now, we might not be able to finish them all. However, these insects will rot. Once they rot, the toxins contained in these insects' corpses will cause even more serious disasters. There is a saying that after a disaster, there will be a plague. But look at this year's locust plague. Is there any problem? It's all thanks to these things. So, I collected these locusts and selected the ones that had no problems. After processing, they became delicious fried locusts and salt and pepper locusts. But the shelf life of these things is limited, and I can't keep accumulating so many locusts, can I? So, I made this pig feed. By the way, Lao Li also knows about this, so I added some medicinal materials, bran, grass powder, salt, tongue oil, and other things to make the feed. I did this just to benefit the country and the people. There is no difference at all. And I did this just to let the people of the entire Tang dynasty live a well-off life. Only then did the expressions of Li Yuan, as well as Yu Shernan and the others, ease up a little. Then, they still asked somewhat strangely, "Are you sure that the things you gave us to eat are all? Don't worry, I'm also eating those things. Do you think I'll be careless when it comes to eating?" Hearing this, Yu Shernan and the others were relieved and asked, "Just now, we heard from Old Master Li that he encountered a group of pigs at the foot of the mountain. I heard that it was you who made them?" Zhang Feng was somewhat stupefied, looking at Li Yuan. Li Yuan coughed and said, "I went out for a stroll and met Jing Tufu." This time, Zhang Feng instantly understood. "You all know about that matter, and this," Li Yuan waved his hand and said, "We all know about this matter. What we want to ask is, does that pork really have no fishy smell?" This was a big deal. This was related to whether this thing could be used as a business opportunity at the opening banquet of the phosphate fertilizer factory. At this time, although pork had been accepted in Chang, and it was still deeply disliked in other places. At this time, the phosphate fertilizer factory was related to the lives of everyone in the world, as well as a new business opportunity for those businessmen. They would never let go of this opportunity. Therefore, Li Yuan and Li Shimin thought of this matter almost at the same time. That was why Li Yuan asked this question at this time. It was the first time that Li Yuan was so cautious. At this time, Zhang Feng also felt a little scared in his heart. But thinking carefully about what he heard when he was in his hometown, as well as seeing the butcher pigs with his own eyes and asking his dad those idiotic questions, Zhang Feng still said, "I'm sure. This pig definitely has no fishy smell." When Zhang Feng wanted to eat pork for the first time, he went to get some and was immediately dumbfounded. Putting aside the fact that the pig was skin and bones, those breeding pigs made Zhang Feng somewhat unsure of how to eat them. In the end, when he was strolling in the pharmacy, he happened to see a big aniseed. Only then did he think of this method to get rid of the fishy smell. But the wine used in this made Zhang Feng's heart ache terribly, and the source of this was the pig's egg. Once it was removed, there would generally not be any fishy smell. This was also what he had asked the adults out of curiosity and ignorance when he was in the countryside. At this time, hearing Zhang Feng say this, Li Yuan then said, "Fengzi, you're going to make a fortune this time." Hearing this, Zhang Feng was a little dumbfounded. And Yu Shernan and the others were the same. They asked, "What's going on?" Li Yuan smiled mysteriously and said, "Actually, this is true. Such a good thing, how can we be the only ones to enjoy it? We have to set our sights a little further. Think about those bitter cold places. Don't these people lack this kind of thing the most?" Li Yuan said. Zhang Feng instantly slapped his head. He also thought of such a matter and said excitedly, "Motherf asterisk cur, this is really a big deal to make a fortune. Old master, we're rich this time." Chapter 1579. Pigs. This kind of thing. There were not many of them in this era. The main reason was that the smell of this thing was too strong. Most people would not raise them, and the only purpose of raising these things was to get their feces. After the feces were mixed with the thatch and leaves in the pig house and fermented, this was the best fertilizer in the eyes of their era. This kind of fertilizer even lasted for thousands of years. However, the pigs in this era did not have a trace of dignity. Their existence was just to let the people get feces. Only a very small number of poor people would use some indigenous methods to marinate some meat for daily consumption, because they could not afford the expensive mutton. Therefore, when Tubo and the disaster of Tugahun Locust were in an uproar, Zhang Feng took the opportunity to get a lot. At that time, everyone thought that Zhang Feng was crazy and that the Tang dynasty was crazy. They sold and gave all the pigs to the Tang dynasty. In their eyes, people could not eat their fill at that time, let alone this kind of filthy thing. If they could exchange it for some final value, they would also get something. However, who would have thought that Zhang Feng would actually be able to turn this trash into a treasure? He was able to turn it from the lowliest, least liked, and even somewhat insulting filth into a treasure that was sought after by everyone in the blink of an eye. This matter really made people's jaws drop to the ground. As soon as the braised meat appeared, it made the people in Chang and crazy. First, they gave it alms at the city gate. Then, the people could not bear the temptation of the fragrance and tried to buy it. Then, when the big families got the news, they were fascinated. After 2 months, the people in Chang and had already accepted the taste of the braised meat. At this time, no one said that this thing was filthy. There were even students who came up with a poem for this pork. They did not mention it. Now, when Li Yuan and the others found out that eunuch Gao, whom Zhang Feng had mysteriously gotten from the palace, was actually for this matter, at that time, everyone was secretly laughing that Zhang Feng would actually do something foolish. Today, after accidentally seeing those fat pigs in the pigsty that he had never seen before, Li Yuan could no longer remain calm. At this moment, Zhang Feng was also thinking about many things. The first thing that came to his mind was how he could make the first move in the export trade with the pork this time. The most important thing was the benefits that the pig would bring in the future. In this era, there was no such thing as a refrigerator. Therefore, the transportation of this kind of pig must be done while it was still alive or directly sold as piglets. Only in this way could the profits be maximized. But if that's the case, what about the money? He couldn't possibly let all the people of the Tang dynasty go to the outer space, could he? That was simply impractical. Slowly, Zhang Feng thought of something. That was artificial ice. This thing could be said to be complicated, but it was really complicated. It could be said to be simple, but it could be easily made. Once it was made, it would save a lot of money when transporting pork in the future, as well as the leakage of the technology, by freezing the entire process. If that was the case, how much money would that be? *CK. Li Yuan looked at Zhang Feng's drooling appearance and couldn't help but criticize in his heart. Fengzi, what are you thinking in your head right now? The current industry of this thing is just being accepted by the people in our Chang. You want to? Li Yuan naturally knew what Zhang Feng was thinking of. This guy was probably thinking of those gold and silver things in his head. Otherwise, how could he have such an appearance? Thinking up to here, Li Yuan continued, before today, I really haven't heard about the matter of this pig. It's just that I feel that the meat is becoming less and less, and I keep feeling that I'm not used to it. Today, when I left the city for a stroll, I discovered that you actually caused such a big commotion outside the city. But this time, you can be considered to have miscalculated. Zhang Feng waved his hand and said, No, no, no. Old man, it's not the time yet. Li Yuan naturally curled his lips disapprovingly and said, Then tell me, what did old man say wrong? Zhang Feng became spirited and said to Yu Shernan and the others, Old man, respected teachers, this is what I think. This kind of thing like a pig in everyone's eyes, it's just a kind of fertilizer that promotes the farmer's fields. Although the braised meat has appeared at this time, once this popularity passes, this pig will still be this kind of unremarkable pig. So even if we spend countless financial and material resources, it's impossible to promote it. So, I'm asking you if you want to make another plan. The few of them heard this. They looked at each other and smiled. Li Yuan said, So, you're planning to let it be raised in that small village just like that? Zhang Feng waved his hand and said smugly, Old man, don't look down on this village. Have you ever heard of the phrase, a single spark can start a prairie fire? Once the fire of this small village really burns, then it's a fire that's enough to burn into the stomach of every citizen in an instant. Chapter 1580. Naturally, Li Yuan and the others didn't know that a single spark could start a prairie fire. At this time, they didn't have time to study the origin of Zhang Feng's words. The pig that could grow to 200 pounds in 3 months was a miraculous thing that couldn't be more miraculous. And this was a good thing that didn't have any fishy smell. For ordinary people, if they could eat mutton during the new year, it would be a sign that their family was well off. But most of the people had never tasted mutton since they were children. They could only afford to eat the unbearably smelly pork from before. This time, Zhang Feng's move undoubtedly brought good news to all the ordinary people of the Tang dynasty. Zhang Feng was right about this thing. No matter what method Zhang Feng used before, even if they used the imperial edict, the effect would be minimal. After all, it was just like the opening of White Deer College last time. The imperial edict was issued, but still no one came. Later, because of the mid-autumn poetry meet, students came one after another. What did this mean? It meant that the imperial edict was sometimes just an excuse. It could only convey one thing to the people. And what really influenced the people was still their own decision. No one could influence them. Not to mention this pig. Now, if they bought it from Zhang Feng, they would have to pay a lot of money for a pig. For ordinary people, if they didn't see any concrete evidence to prove that this pig was really different from the previous one, who would be willing to buy it? Therefore, at this time, Zhang Feng said that a single spark could start a prairie fire. This was the real meaning. Only when they felt good using it, they would buy it. This was the normal state of the people in this era. But at this time, Ouyang Sun said something different. Kid, since the establishment of our academy, we have been aiming to educate all people. Such a good thing, why did we choose such a method this time? The old Xiaotsai and Li Gang both nodded. They agreed with Ouyang Sun's words. Seeing this, Zhang Feng hurriedly said, Mr. Xinbin, do you still remember the braised meat incident last time? Ouyang Sun naturally remembered. He nodded and asked, Is it related to this matter? There must be a huge connection. Think about it. The people in Chang and can accept it because of the braised meat incident. But what about the people in other places? What about those who had never tasted braised meat? Will they believe that this thing is real just because of a few words? Zhang Feng shrugged. Impossible. Ouyang Sun frowned and said, when you were talking to the old man just now, I was thinking about this. After thinking about it for a long time, I feel that this is a good thing for the country and the people. At this time, there is only mutton. Other than that, there is almost no other meat that is too mainstream. The appearance of pork, on one hand, can make meat affordable for the people, and on the other hand, make meat a part of the people's livelihood. Why not? Why do you say it's impossible? Without waiting for Zhang Feng to speak, Li Yuan, who had a cigarette in his mouth, said with a smile, this matter, if my guess is correct, this kid's meaning should be that right now, the common people are still unable to accept these things, just like when we first released those locusts. Only after they personally witness this matter, perhaps they will truly believe that there is such a miraculous pig in this world, as well as such a wonderful thing. Think about it. Before I saw it, I thought this kid was bragging that he could increase his weight to 200 kilograms in 3 months, let alone them. That's why I feel that Feng Zi is right. Only by letting these people see with their own eyes how different these piggies are every day and then spreading the news will this effect will be based on their own interests. How can they not know this? Li Yuan patted Zhang Feng's shoulder with a smile and asked, am I right? Zhang Feng's mouth twitched. Yes, you're right. However, we can eat fish now. The fish has taken the bait. Ha! Hearing this, several people laughed out loud. But this time, they didn't say a single word about not having a son. Almost everyone sitting here was a figure who could make the earth tremble with a stomp of their feet in the Tang dynasty. Naturally, their good taste was also vicious. So today, he got their approval. It was also a good thing for Zhang Feng in the future. He was still worried that after this matter was exposed by old Master Li, would he give him another ideological and political lesson. But at this time, seeing this, he finally passed the examination. How could this not make Zhang Feng happy? In fact, this pig. Zhang Feng had been thinking about it since early in the morning. But it was also because the people did not like it that it had been delayed and paid a lot of money to let Zheng Tufu, Ma Zhou and the others go out of the city separately to do this thing. Only under the white eyes of the people, let them see, would they believe that this thing was powerful and awesome. At this time, Zhang Feng listened to the laughter of several people. He also grabbed the fishing rods in a hurry and pulled the fish up. But because he bragged a little longer just now, several rods had already been rising and falling on the surface of the lake at this time. And there were still 2 rods, which were in danger of sliding into the lake. With one in each hand, Zhang Feng spent an entire meal's worth of effort to get 2 huge carps. And the 2 carps were almost golden yellow. Seeing this, several people could not help but stop talking and looked at the carps in Zhang Feng's hand with a heavy face. Dong. The 2 lively fish died easily in Zhang Feng's hands. Seeing that everyone was looking at him with a strange expression, Zhang Feng smiled and said, this fish is fresh enough. Wait a moment, we can eat the grilled fish soon. Chapter 1581. Several people looked at Li Yuan with a strange look. Then they looked at Zhang Feng. They didn't know what to say. When the country was founded, the retired emperor had issued an edict that this carp had the same name as the Li royal family, so it was forbidden to eat carp. But today, in front of the retired emperor who issued the imperial edict, he killed the carp himself and ate it. Zhang Feng was probably the first person in the world. After the old scholar came to his senses, he hurriedly grabbed Zhang Feng, pulled Zhang Feng aside with a solemn look, and whispered, Fengzi, don't you know that this fish can't be eaten? Zhang Feng was stunned. Old scholar, haven't you eaten it many times and it's all right? And this autumn carp is the fattest and most delicious. Look at this fish, how fat and tender it is. It's a pity not to eat it. Hearing that, the old scholar turned pale with fright and hurriedly covered Zhang Feng's mouth, saying, Can you stop talking? Don't you know about the imperial edict? Zhang Feng was even more confused. Wasn't it just eating a fish? Did he have to be like this? I say, old scholar, do you have to be like this just to eat a fish? What imperial edict? Can't you eat this fish? But before he finished speaking, Zhang Feng's face couldn't help but become strange. He didn't think of any imperial edict, but he thought of a matter that was mentioned many times in the old and new Tang dynasty books. That was, Li Yuan once ordered that ordinary people were forbidden to eat. Damn it. Damn it. Zhang Feng was a little uneasy in an instant. He remembered that last time, he also fried fish with lime powder here. But didn't you all eat more delicious than the other one? Why couldn't he eat it today? Was there something wrong with the calendar? Or the days reversed? Seeing Zhang Feng like this, Xianxia and others all looked at Zhang Feng with a playful look, wondering how to solve it. If this brat didn't suffer a few setbacks, his temper wouldn't change. When Li Yuan saw this, he couldn't help but shake his head. Although he also wanted to see Zhang Feng suffer, this was not the time to play this. He said faintly, "Okay, this matter is not so serious. This fish, just a few of us will eat. It's not a problem. As long as we don't say, who will know what fish we eat." When Zhang Feng heard that, he gave Li Yuan a big thumbs up and said, "It's still the old man who is open-minded. Like I said, isn't it just a fish fungus?" The word carp in carp meant good fortune descending from the heavens. It was the same as the name of the royal family. What did this mean? This means that the heavens have bestowed good fortune. The carp represents wealth and fortune. How can we not use it? The corner of Li Yuan's mouth twitched. He couldn't help but curse in his heart. To be able to forcefully pull something like this up, you're really something. Okay, stop bragging. I haven't eaten until now today. Don't you know how to feel sorry for me, this old man? When Zhang Feng heard that, he instantly beamed with joy and glanced at everyone. After seeing that everyone ignored him, he ran to fish eagerly. When it came to eating, Zhang Feng had never been careless. The stove here was ready-made. After the fish was slightly marinated with onion, garlic, ginger, and pepper, Zhang Feng eagerly ran to the villa and brought 2 large trays, a piece of butter, dogwood, and other condiments. The fish needed to be roasted slowly over a small fire. And it didn't need any operation. After a while, Li Yuan, Xianxia, and the others who were playing cards were attracted by the fragrance here. They looked at the 2 trays that were stacked together and couldn't help but ask, "It's done just like that?" Zhang Feng nodded. "Yes, but it will take a while. Wait for me to warm the wine for him. When the wine is warm and a handful of wine is sprinkled, it can be taken out of the pot." It was the first time for everyone to see grilled fish like this. They had almost eaten the paper-wrapped fish and grilled fish with a stick before, but they really hadn't seen fish cooked like this. The spicy taste of dogwood and the numbing taste of pepper instantly made everyone's appetite move under the effect of the sizzling oil. Zhang Feng was neither too fast nor too slow. However, Li Yuan had long been jealous. "Fengzi, this thing, how long will it take?" Zhang Feng said, "Neither too fast nor too slow. What's the hurry?" "Wait. We can't wait, let's start?" Li Yuan rubbed his hands, his eyes wide open. Zhang Feng was a little speechless, but when he turned around to look, Xianxia and the others' expressions were almost the same as Li Yuan's. He nodded and said, "Then, you guys step aside, I'll show you a unique skill, and you can eat in a while." While talking, Zhang Feng used the dagger to carefully pry open the inverted tray. In an instant, everyone's eyes widened, staring at the tray. At this time, the 2 carps in the tray were already yellow and orange on the surface, especially the fishtails, which were raised high at this time. Zhang Feng used the dagger to turn the 2 fish over. Then, he evenly sprinkled a layer of seasoning and a layer of sauce, sprinkled some shallots, and then Zhang Feng slightly added a few wooden sticks to the fire in the stove to make it more vigorous. He took a small wine jar from another stove and evenly sprinkled a layer of wine on the fish in the tray. Then, Zhang Feng lit up a small branch and threw it into the tray under the curious gazes of the few people. The next moment, the whole tray, with a bang, ignited a raging fire. In an instant, everyone was shocked. Until now, Zhang Feng clapped his hands and said, "Okay, we can start." Chapter 1582. Such a big fire. And it's in such a rough way, making Li Yuan and the others stunned. It's the first time they've seen such a cooking method. Without using a stove, only a small stove can cook such a delicacy. In everyone's eyes, they can't help but wonder if what they ate before counts as food. The key is that the taste of this fish is extremely delicious. But looking at the blazing blue flame and Zhang Feng sitting cross-legged in front of the stove, they can't help but feel a little apprehensive. This thing, can it be eaten? But really can't stand the temptation of that delicacy, Li Yuan also imitated and sat down with Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng scattered a handful of wild vegetables at this time and called everyone to sit down. Xianxia and the others also really haven't seen such a way of eating. Seeing Li Yuan sit down, they can only brace themselves and sit down. This is a carp, but it's eaten with the retired emperor. At this time, except for Zhang Feng, the hearts of the others are filled with thrill. But Zhang Feng doesn't care. After all, there's no emperor here as well as court officials. What's there to be afraid of? He doesn't believe that the common people haven't secretly eaten this thing. As soon as they sit down, after Li Yuan tasted a mouthful, the expression on his face instantly becomes very interesting. Feng Zi, you have to teach that chef of mine how to cook such delicious food when we get back. Eating here, I have a feeling that I don't want to leave. Don't say this way of eating, it looks fancy, but the taste is also superb. Zhang Feng calls out to everyone smugly, respected teachers, let's eat, otherwise, it'll be in the old man's stomach. The few people laugh dryly, only drinking, not daring to move their chopsticks. Seeing this, Zhang Feng is too lazy to pay attention to them. Isn't it satisfying to eat and drink with Li Yuan? After eating for a while, Li Yuan asks, Feng Zi, the battle of Xiaozi this time is already imminent. Why do you still look so leisurely and carefree, as if you're not in a hurry at all? Zhang Feng chuckles. Could it be that frowning and sighing every day is the solution? Li Yuan's eyes flashed, and he nodded. This kid was right. However, he still asked in confusion, but right now, everyone who knows about this matter is frowning except you. Could it be that you have some kind of brilliant plan? Zhang Feng looked at Li Yuan with a face full of vigilance. What? Lao Li came and didn't work. Why did you also come to trick me? To tell you the truth, this matter is already destined to be resolved. What is there to worry about? I've asked Mokido and Arkanon about the workshop at the foot of the mountain and the workshop on the mountain last night. Basically, they have produced more than 10,000 crossbows and strong bows, as well as more than 10,000 new spears. By the way, speaking of spears, I'll show you the spear that I designed today. As Zhang Feng spoke, he mysteriously put down his wineglass and took out a long object wrapped in red cloth from his back. Li Yuan saw this thing when he came today, but Zhang Feng didn't say anything, so he didn't ask. At this time, after Zhang Feng took it down, he patted the red cloth package and said, This was sent by Mokido last night. Originally, when Lao Li came yesterday, I wanted to give it to him, but at that time, the workshop was busy, so Mokido didn't send it until last night. As he spoke, Zhang Feng slowly opened the red cloth. Inside the red cloth, there was a shiny silver object with a bit of sharpness in front of everyone's eyes. Although this object was called a spear, it had 3 sections. Each section was about 5 feet long, and on the first section, there was a slightly curved object that was almost 4 feet long. It looked like a mo sword, but also like a machete. It was something between a spear and a spear. It looked quite heavy and solemn. Li Shimin was a little shocked. Xianxia and the others had heavy expressions on their faces. Zhang Feng slowly put the 3 sections together, and what connected these 3 things was actually something like a screw. The handle was made of iron, and it was hollow. It looked quite heavy. On the last section, which was similar to the handle, there was a drum the size of a fist. At the end of the drum, there was a sharp tip. It was only a few inches long. The whole spear looked quite solemn at this time. Zhang Feng got up with some difficulty, waved the spear, and then stabbed it on the fishing platform. He said proudly, Old man, what do you think of this thing? In the past, almost all spears had handles made of wood. Although it was light. But it was too damaged. At this time, seeing this spear, for some reason, it gave Li Yuan the feeling that this thing was the real spear. Li Yuan couldn't help but get up. Under the worried eyes of Xianxia and the others, he picked up the spear and waved it vigorously. Then he asked, Feng Zi, this spear, is it the kind of spear that you said can break anything? Without waiting for Zhang Feng to speak, the spear in Li Yuan's hand fiercely chopped on a big stone not far from everyone. Ding. Chapter 1583. Under everyone's horrified gazes. That big rock, from the place where the spear hacked, actually cracked open a crack, then with a crack, it split into two halves. In an instant. Not only Yu Shinan, even Li Yuan, at this time, sucked in a breath of cold air as if he had a toothache. Such a sharp spear, not only can it stab, but even if it's hacking, it's still so sharp. This is a big rock. It can even be broken with one hack. If it's a human, who can withstand it? Wouldn't this be splitting a human and a horse? Li Yuan hurriedly pulled back the spear, carefully looking at the sharp edge, only to see that the place where this diamond-shaped spear had just hacked down, except for a trace of white mark and a trace of the curved edge, there was no trace left. If this was a spear in the past, with such a hack, it would be strange if it didn't split into two halves. But if this was placed in the hands of Li Yuan when he was young, or in the hands of Niu Jinda and the others, with this hack, good. Li Yuan couldn't help but shout, good, excitedly. Feng Zi, this thing, how many did you make? Zhang Feng pressed his hand, letting the few of them sit down, then said, this thing, I only said that I designed a few. Does Li Gan want to go to Baiju Temple? This thing, I'm going to give him and Gao Can one each. Also, General Niu Jinda, although I haven't seen him before, General Niu's reputation, this little one admires him very much, so I'm going to give him a few to show my sincerity. Li Yuan's eyes reddened. Then, why don't you give old man one to play with? Zhang Feng's expression froze. You're already so old, if you sprain your waist, I can't afford to compensate. Not giving. You stinky brat, today, Lao Tzu wants this thing, you have to give it even if you don't want to. Someone come, bring it back for me. Li Yuan was also anxious. He hugged the spear tightly and refused to let go. He even hurriedly called for the commander of the guards and ran away with the spear in his arms. Only after watching the imperial bodyguard carry the pike away did Li Yuan sit down comfortably. He patted Zhang Feng's shoulder as if he was showing off. Zhang Feng was speechless. Is there a need for that? Since I can take it out in front of you, I'm naturally prepared to give it to you. Otherwise, why would I take it out? Brat, if you saw the good stuff that time, would you cheat me? When Li Yuan heard that, he almost had a feeling of wanting to beat someone up. Bastard, couldn't you have told me earlier? Zhang Feng couldn't be bothered with him. He said, actually, I was prepared to give you the longbow and crossbow for self-defense. But this thing is related to the Battle of Chiotzi, it can't be lost, so I thought about it and didn't take it out. When the Battle of Chiotzi is over, I, Zhang Feng, will naturally give you as many of these things as you want. Even if you have to arm yourself to the teeth, I'll get it for you, just not now. Li Yuan heard that and couldn't help but be flustered. However, seeing that Zhang Feng was unwilling to say more, he could only give up. Just as Yu Shinan and the others were worried, and Li Yuan was panting with rage and was about to go berserk, the meal ended. At this time, the few people were also dizzy from drinking, basking in the sun and blowing the warm wind on the lake. They were even more drunk now. Li Yuan looked at Zhang Feng, whose face was red and humming an unknown song, and asked, Fengzi, I heard that you've been working on some cannon recently. Is that thing really as powerful as my Erlang said? Zhang Feng was already drunk to the point of dizziness. Seeing that Li Yuan asked about this, Zhang Feng instantly became spirited. I say, old master, you're looking down on me, Zhang Feng, aren't you? Look at me, do those things have an undeserved reputation? Let me tell you, you haven't seen the power of those cannons. Good fellow, with the current situation of Chiotzi, only 10 cannons are enough to make the 300,000 troops outside the city retreat in an instant. If they're not afraid of death and attack by force, it only takes 2 hours for the 300,000 troops to be blown up by my 10 cannons. Moreover, these cannons are an area of effect attack. It's not something those arrow clusters can compare to. It's just that the range is only about 300 to 500 steps. However, as long as they dare to show their faces, these 10 cannons, Lao Tzu, will teach them a lesson. Li Yuan had heard about this matter long ago. But at this time, seeing Zhang Feng say so, he still somewhat does not believe it. Moreover, He came to the mountain today to fish for information. Seeing that Zhang Feng is drunk at this time, Li Yuan could not help but click his tongue twice, saying disdainfully, "This bragging is simply enough." Hearing this, Zhang Feng was instantly enraged. "Hey, I said you're a rotten old man, you don't believe it, do you?" As soon as these words come out, the complexion of the old scholar and the others suddenly change greatly. They hurriedly want to stop Zhang Feng. Li Yuan, on the other hand, does not care. He waves his hand to let everyone sit down, laughing mischievously. "Who doesn't know how to brag, but just like that flintlock, you've been talking about it for so long, but you should take it out." How can Zhang Feng endure this? Standing up unsteadily, he grabs Li Yuan's collar and says, "Go, go, go, I'll let you experience it." Chapter 1584. Yushernan and the others were dumbfounded by Li Yuan's actions. How could they not see that Li Yuan was trying to goad them into action? But the kind of weapon Zhang Feng took out just now really gave them quite a scare. This thing. It was simply cruel to look at, not to mention using it on the battlefield. If it was before, they would have already pointed at Zhang Feng's nose and scolded him. How could they wait until now? But now, after following Zhang Feng for a long time, as well as reading those books on psychology, medicine, military science and so on written by Zhang Feng, they gradually accepted these. But it did not mean that they could really accept these weapons. At this time, seeing Li Yuan like this, they all shook their heads and sighed. But at this time, seeing the two swagger towards the forging workshop, how could they sit still? Wouldn't they make a hole in the sky if they went there? The old scholar stood up shakily and shouted at a few students passing by not far away, someone, quickly go and tell Ma Zhou and the others to follow the dean. You must watch the dean." On the other side, after Fang Xianling and Wei Jing finished dealing with the matters of the imperial court, they then leisurely rode their mules up the mountain, discussing the matters of the imperial court along the way. As soon as the two arrived at the foot of the mountain, they bumped into the old village chief strolling blindly on the street with a string of money. When the old village chief saw the two, he hurriedly went forward to welcome them. "Yo. This old man woke up this morning and heard this magpie chirping in front of the small window. So it's the two of you who came?" Fang Xianling and Wei Jing also cupped their fists and greeted the old village chief, asking, "So it's the old village chief, you are, I have nothing to do, right? I have to keep an eye on it. If those things from before happen again, I'll feel guilty." As if touching on the old village chief's sore spot, the two could not bear it and hurriedly asked, "Then you stroll first. We went up the mountain to look for Feng Zi. I wonder if he's on the mountain?" However, before noon today, old Master Li also came. You can go to Feng Zi's villa to look for him. You can't go wrong. Wei Zheng and Fang Xianling were shocked. He hurriedly cupped his fists at the old village chief and urged the little donkey under him to hurry up the mountain. After the two of them left, Xianxia asked curiously, "Grandpa, who are these two grandpas?" The old village head put away the smile on his face and stared at Fang Xianling and Wei Jing, saying, "Remember these two. These two are here to trap Feng Zi. These guys, when they have nothing to do, they come to trap him. You have to be careful. In the future, you have to be on guard against them. You have to watch out for your brother's family." Qian Huan looked at the two of them as if she understood. She shook her finger and said, "Oh, so they are bad guys." Fang Xianling and Wei Jing did not expect that the retired emperor would dare to climb Mount Shao alone. Such a big thing had happened a few days ago. If he acted alone at this time, what if the remnants of those people? What would the consequences be? Moreover, the retired emperor had always been very arrogant. What Zhang Feng was doing now had a wide range of implications. If he drank a few cups of wine, the consequences would be, however, at this moment. Just as the two of them hurriedly urged the little donkey to pass through the mountain gate and were ready to go up the mountain, a rider suddenly jumped down from the mountain. The two of them could not help but be stunned. Although the cement road was paved with rubber, the sound of the horse's hooves hitting the ground was unusually clear. When the two of them looked over, they saw that the rider was carrying a long thing wrapped in clothes on his shoulder. It seemed to be a spear, but it was not. The point was that the two of them knew this person. It was the retired emperor's guard captain. The two of them could not help but look at each other. How could he go down the mountain at this time? However, they did not dare to ask and could only urge the little donkey to run up the mountain. When the guard captain passed by the two of them, he just nodded and hurried away. This time, Wei Zheng and Fang Xianling were furious. They looked at each other in shock, then urged their little donkeys to gallop up the mountain. When the two of them arrived at the villa area, they only saw that Yu Shernan and others were still drinking tea, chatting and fishing by the waterfall not far away, but they did not see Zhang Feng and Li Yuan. The two of them did not wait to greet each other and hurriedly asked, "Brother Bashi, have you seen the old master and Feng Zi?" The few of them were stunned. But at the same time, they were happy. He pointed to the workshop and said, "They went to the workshop. You should go quickly, or I'm afraid they will poke a hole in the sky." Wei Zheng was shocked when he heard this. What's going on? Just now, the old master's guard took away the indestructible spear that Feng Zi made. Now, it seems that he wants to see the cannon that Feng Zi mentioned. You have to go quickly. If something happens, it will be troublesome. What? The two of them were shocked. The two of them had long heard about the cannon that Zhang Feng had created. They had also witnessed the might of the crossbow and the like. At this moment, when they saw that the two of them were drunk, how could they not know that this was a serious matter? Chapter 1585. While Wei Zheng and Fang Xianling were rushing to the workshop, Fang Xianling rushed to the workshop. On the other side, at the military camp at the desolate mountain pass, Li Yuan's bodyguard was blocked by Yu Qigong's personal guard. At this moment, Yu Qigong and Qing Yaojin were also hurriedly alerted and rushed over. Originally, the two of them had been hurriedly transferred back to the barracks by the emperor because of the matter in Sheng province. During this period of time, there had been a lot of problems in the military. First, after Zhang Feng's training method was popularized, it caused some ruffians in the army to cause trouble. Then, the sons of the military leaders quit their jobs. This caused the two of them to be furious. They really wanted to hit someone. But none of these people were good people. These matters were mixed together. So that when the two returned to the military camp, the first thing they did was to fiercely beat these people up. Most importantly, last time, Qin Qiong, that bastard, stole their limelight. At this moment, the two were in a fit of anger. But at this moment, they heard that Li Yuan's imperial guard actually hurriedly left White Deer College by himself. How could this be? The two hurriedly rode their horses and rushed to the pass at the desolate mountain pass. At this moment, that imperial guard commander was holding Li Yuan's gold medal in his hand. The long cloth bundle in his hand was tightly grasped behind his back. People with discerning eyes could tell that this thing, to put it bluntly, was actually a weapon. Who didn't know? When the two arrived, they already discovered that this imperial guard was actually about to make a move. The two of them had seen this person before, and when this person saw that the person in question had arrived, he angrily threw the token in his hand at Yu Qigong. "Lord Yuqi, General Cheng, the two of you really have great authority. You know, this one is under the old master's order to personally escort this thing back to the capital. Do the two of you want to disobey the order?" At this moment, the Imperial Guard's words were undoubtedly no different from farts in the ears of Yuqi and Qing Yaojin. He chuckled and said, "What are the two of you talking about? He also has no way of talking about this matter, right? How do I say this thing? Think about it, what if there is a spy pretending to be him?" The Imperial Guard couldn't help but get angry when he heard this. "The two of you don't have to be so eccentric. Honestly speaking, this is a great treasure that Principal Zhang gave to the old master. As soon as I hear baby," Yu Qigong and Qing Yaojin could no longer sit still. They had seen crossbows and strong bows before, but they had only seen them from afar and had never used them. Although these things were now under their supervision, they were still classified as top secret without the emperor's permission. Other than Zhang Feng, no one else had the right to look or ask for one. This is simply like guarding a treasure mountain. How can the two of them let go of this helplessness? Yu Qigong and Qing Yaojin instantly lost their composure when they saw the item in the Imperial Guard's hand and heard his words. The two of them looked at each other, their eyes flashing with a look that only the two of them understood. Then Yu Qigong laughed and said, "Well, brother, long time no see. Let's go have a good chat? The Imperial Guard took 2 steps back, his face full of caution. You two, please don't do this. This one has a heavy life. Qing Yaojin hurriedly interrupted him and said with a smile, well, there's no hurry. We've met some bandits on the way. Let's go to the barracks first. This matter isn't urgent. Isn't the old master still on the mountain? It won't be delayed. At most, I'll have someone escort you back personally. The Imperial Guard didn't react. The 2 of them were held down by the Imperial Guard on the left and right and walked towards the barracks. The barracks were actually still very far away. However, Yu Qigong and Qing Yaojin were in a hurry to see the mysterious weapon, so they arranged for the Imperial Guard to stay in a nearby tent. As soon as they entered the tent, Yu Qigong and Qing Yaojin hurriedly passed cigarettes to the Imperial Guard and lit the fire. After a series of actions, the Imperial Guard's head was on cloud 9. Logically speaking, he was only a secondary rank 5 official. However, these 2 were secondary rank 1 generals. It would be strange if there was nothing wrong with such people trying to curry favor with him. At this moment, the 3 of them sat down. Yu Qigong said subtly, Brother, look, this thing is so heavy. Why don't you put it down and rest for a while? The Imperial Guard commander had been on guard against these 2 for a long time, but he also wanted to see the power of this spear for himself. After all, when he was on the mountain just now, although he had seen Li Yuanwu, he felt like a cat was scratching his heart. Now that there were 2 ready-made scapegoats, what's wrong with playing with them? Thinking of this, the Imperial Guard commander reluctantly put the spear in Yu Qigong's hands. Lord Yuqi, this was made by President Zhang himself. I heard that this thing was said by President Zhang to be an invincible spear. You 2 should take it easy. Yu Qigong and Qing Yaojin were very excited when they heard this. Earlier, he had heard that Zhang Feng wanted to tinker with this thing. However, last time, he had been tinkering with crossbows, ballistas, and other things as well as Mitsubishi Army knives. Each of them had a Mitsubishi Army knife. However, this thing was not satisfying. It was too small. It was not something that a grown man could play with. At this moment, when they heard what the Imperial Guard commander said, how could the 2 of them bear it? They hurriedly opened the package. When they saw the strangely shaped spear that was made of pure steel, both of their eyes were fixed on it. This was true. Damn it. Zhang Feng really made it. Chapter 1586. Such a weapon. Holding it in his hand, he felt a sense of heaviness. But after weighing it in his hand, he found that it was only a little more than 15 kilograms. If this thing was made by a general, then its weight, wasn't it too light? And if it was a soldier, wasn't this AF** king waste? Thinking of this, the 2 of them couldn't sit still. After practicing a few moves with it, they looked at the 2 gaps in amazement and asked, What's the matter with this? Why isn't it whole? Even the commander was speechless. Playing with it in his hand, he said, When I saw it before, it had 3 sections. In the end, President Zhang somehow pieced it together. Let me try? Hearing this, Qing Yaojin's eyes lit up with excitement. Holding the spear shaft, he twisted it left and right, and even tugged at it with Yu Qigong and the commander. But it still couldn't be removed. At this moment, the 3 of them stared at this oddly shaped weapon and couldn't help but frown. But at this moment, Yu Qigong was playing with the first section and said, This shape is completely designed for the battlefield. Old hey, this guy has never been on the battlefield, and he's like a chicken. How can he make such a thing? This thing looks like it can not only smash, but also has the function of a halberd. This is simply made for the battlefield. Was it really made by that bastard Zhang Feng? While talking, Yu Qigong fiercely grabbed the spear shaft, and then fiercely jabbed it down at a bowl-sized protrusion on the ground of the camp. Ding! In an instant, the diamond-shaped spike at the bottom of the spear, like a war drum, pierced the stone instantly. In an instant, the stone was pierced into countless small pieces. And the tip of the spear was intact. Hiss! The 3 of them couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. This time, the Imperial Guard leader said, No wonder. Just now, by the waterfall, the retired emperor chopped down with his spear, and a huge rock was forcefully shattered. Originally, I thought that the retired emperor's prestige was still the same as before, but now it seems, "Let's go, old hay, let's go for a walk on the mountain?" How could Yuchigong sit still? It would be fine if he didn't see such a treasure. Now that he had seen it, he had to get one no matter what. Putting aside the issue of self-defense, holding it in his hands would be his face. For a general, the first thing they paid attention to was a war horse of a pure breed. The better the horse, the crazier the general would be. Then came the weapon. On the battlefield, if one had a suitable weapon, then anyone could become an unparalleled god of war. After all, when one went to the battlefield, it was to kill the enemy. No matter how good the armor was, it was useless. It was better to stay at home. At this moment, how could the two of them think of anything else? In their hearts, they were thinking more about whether they could get their hands on a handful of these things. Not to mention using it in battle, even if it was placed at home, it would still make people happy. "Brother, I suddenly remembered that there are still some important matters in the army. We won't keep you any longer." Yuchigong suddenly cupped his fists and reluctantly handed the strangely shaped spear to the guard leader. He then said, "Men, quickly send a small team to escort His Excellency back to the city." As he spoke, the two of them reluctantly cupped their fists to the guard leader and then ran away. The head of the Imperial Guards was stunned. "Did the two of you really take me for a fool? Go up the mountain to ask for benefits from the dean. Do you have to do this?" The two of them didn't hear it, but even if they did, they wouldn't take it seriously. Who was he? If they provoked him, they would be fine if he beat them up. It was only for the sake of the Emperor Emeritus that the two of them didn't take him seriously. As soon as the two of them left the tent, they hurriedly rode their horses. After giving orders to the army, they rushed up the mountain. They were afraid that they would lose everything if they were late. After all, just now, Wei Zheng and Feng Xianling went up the mountain personally. At this time, they should have bumped into Feng Zi and the Emperor Emeritus. At this time, they should be pestering Feng Zi to show off his good weapons. At this time, they needed someone bold to test these weapons. Weren't they such people? During this experiment, if there was a slight accident, wouldn't that be? Thinking of this, the two of them sped up. They couldn't wait to be on the mountain at this time. In particular, they didn't know how the dozens of carts of iron for Zhang Feng looked like. It was a good time to go and take a look. After the two of them rushed up the mountain, they went straight to the forge. From afar, the two of them could see carts full of iron or not far away. They were neatly placed in the open space outside the forge. The original forging workshop only occupied a small corner of the west side of the mountain. On the other side of the mountain was the woodworking workshop. At this time, there were not many places on the mountain that needed wood, so at this time, it had almost become the workshop's exclusive place to smelt steel. In the three huge furnaces, which were bigger than the brick kiln factory, although they stood far away, they could still feel the blazing heat. On the other side, back then, the edge of the cliff had become a secret place for the forging workshop. Apart from Zhang Feng, only Arkanon and Mokido could enter the cave. At this time, Arkanon also had a private room. It was also called the smelting workshop. It was just producing colored glass. This was his old profession. However, at this time, because of Zhang Feng's arrival, they all came out to greet him. At this time, along with the sound of 2 horse hooves, only then did the crowd see Yuchigong and Cheng Yaojin. The moment they saw the two of them, Zhang Feng's heart thumped. Damn, these 2 flies, why are they here?